Hello everybody and welcome back to the Resurrected Winner Review podcast. As ever, my name is David and I'm sitting 2022 miles across from Mr. Alex Aldrich. How are you doing today, Alex?
Hello! Happy New Year, sir.
Happy New Year to you too. What have I missed out in that introduction, because that felt shorter than it normally is?
You missed out getting things wrong or having to think about the number?
Having to redo it every time. I knew the number, I had a distance.
Yeah.
We're in it. We're in it.
We've done it.
We're here to talk about 2022 while we sit in 2023. It's a new year, it's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new
We
hour.
are nothing if not revisionist, always, anyway, so we're carrying it on for an entire year's worth of revisionism.
Yeah, I always wondered, like, do we have a Winner Review seasons, or is this just like one endless season? I've just watched the first series of the original Star Trek while I was unwell over Christmas, and there's 30 episodes in that, and 30 episodes in a season when each episode is around an hour long feels like an eternity. So are we like episode 17 of season 1 at the moment, and you're right, and we're right in the weeds? Or are we just like an EastEnders in which we just go and go, and we go and go until someone turns the lights off, at which point we'll, I don't know, have a fight in
I
a
definitely
pub.
remember being confused when WWE started saying it was the end of their season. Like, what are you talking about? You're on next week. What does that mean?
In many cases, with their season finishes at WrestleMania, is that right?
I think,
Which is on a Sunday, and then they have Raw on the Monday.
Season starts again tomorrow. I mean, yeah, I guess this is technically season 2. This is our second game of the year. I suppose starting on 51 will be on season 3 if people want to collect the box sets.
This is the end. So do we need to end on a cliffhanger?
Yeah.
We could do
what
it
we're
like
going to play next.
This is Sopranos. Yeah, we'll be mid-conversation and then we'll just cut it.
I'm going to hold you to that at the end of the show.
Okay. Although that
why are we here?
Why are we here? What plans does
What's
the
it all about?
Lord Almighty have for us? We are here to talk about Game of the Year. Obviously, because we are a video game book club podcast, this is not going to be a Game of the Year as you've probably been listening to on every other podcast, because every other podcast that does video games does a year in review podcast.
Is it wrong?
Is it wrong?
No, I said every other podcast does it wrong.
They do it wrong. They should be doing the top 10 games of 2022 based on how many games we have played.
Yeah, so if any new listeners have been suckered into that, they've just gone Game of the Year mad, and they want any content that has Game of the Year written in front of it, we've got some sour news for you, because there's not a lot of games from 2022 in our Game of the Year.
Are there any? Now I think about it. As we discovered, I thought we played Super Mario World this year, so my concept of years and what we play each year is gone completely out the window. Yeah, okay, we've got one. That's
we've got
true. Two.
Yeah.
What's the second?
Maybe 3?
Oh yeah, we've got 2.
I think the first game we covered last year was from the year before, wasn't it? We would have had 3, but we've pushed God of War back to the start of season 3 because David got the small C over Christmas, and everything got ruined.
Everything got ruined. Yeah, I couldn't play anything that had any sort of quick movement in it. I just felt sick.
Yeah. What a bastard. So that has not been considered for our Game of the Year awards.
No.
Wouldn't have won anyway. Don't worry about it.
So yeah, I guess so how we've done this, Alex has kindly gone through and created some, what do we call it, categories for us, in which we have behind the scenes gone and given each of our top 5 lists, and I guess we just talk about the list. Is that how we're going to do it? We're going to come up with the top 3 and then a winner? Or
the top 3, and we'll cut stuff as we go when we decide it's going to get cut, and then we'll end up with a final 3, as you say, and a winner.
Yeah, okay.
As we did last year, but we've got fewer categories than we did last year because it went on forever. I think we had to split it in 2 parts, if I remember rightly.
Yeah, we did. That was a long old slog, that one, wasn't it?
Yeah, we'll keep it shorter this year. Because we've already talked about all these games, because you can just go listen to the podcast and hear 2 hours on that.
And hear
every single game in here.
I think there's we've don't get me wrong, we've not struggled to fill the list in any way that we've set out, but the thing I thought was interesting in creating this list is that because we sort of just do this podcast off our own backs for a bit of fun, we tend not to play games that we really hate. So like we've got a like what have we got, worst game of the year list, and I was going through it and I was like, I don't literally hate any of these games. There's lots of there's like, these are my least favorite games of the year, and I guess by proxy that makes them the worst games of the year. But there's some games, there's at least 2 games on my worst games of the year list that I quite like.
Yeah, I think least favorite could be a nice way of putting it, to be honest.
Yeah, maybe that's
I don't know if we'll ever change our stance on playing only games that we've previously liked.
No.
Typically, and I think similar to last year, we will probably end up giving the worst game of the year to a game that came out in the year, because they're the only unknown quantities that we play.
Yeah, that's true.
and most of the ones that we find utterly egregious get cut from the podcast and binned.
Yeah, even ones we don't find egregious, even ones we're sort of just struggling to jive with. So one example of that, we should have had a top list of games that we tried to pod about this year, but never made it.
Should, yeah.
Because the one that jumps out to me when I was like thinking about games that I played this year, but not for the podcast, the one that kept jumping out to me is Rogue Legacy 2, because we put quite a lot of hours into that, and then we just thought this isn't sort of jiving with us, so we just sort of dropped it and moved on. That's maybe my biggest disappointment of the year, that I didn't like that game more.
Yeah. Well, we could really have done that, couldn't we? Because I remember there was a plan to play Nobody Saves the World, which I put quite a few hours into, and then gave up with.
Nobody Saves the World?
Yeah, you're the one who told me about that. That's the Guacamelee dudes.
I've somehow deleted that from my brain. Oh, no, I did play a bit of that. Yeah, I played quite a bit of that as well. Probably put about 6 or 7 hours into that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another one that was quite disappointing, because it just became quite rote, I thought. Like,
yeah.
Anyway, we're here to celebrate 2022, not poke holes
yeah,
in.
we are mostly every other category. There's two negative categories where we're going to start negging, and then the other ones are all posy.
Yeah, will we start off with best story? Are we doing this in order?
Let's
Alex?
do it.
Yeah?
Yeah, let's do best story.
So how do you want to... So sorry, I just gave you I gave you a little cut there in case you wanted to, because I know you like to put a little tune in sometimes.
I might do, yeah. Well, if our friend KDB from the award-winning Gears Intel podcast is anything to go by, you have a voice that everybody loves. So I think you should read the nominations or the nominees. This time you've only got to read 5, because I'm pretty sure every single one of them is the same for both of us, just in a different order.
We have so our top 5 was, so I think we should say this before we start. Again, to give you guys a rundown of how we did this, Alex kindly put together a spreadsheet for us and put a nice little list beside to remind me, because again, I thought we played Mario World this year, of the games that we played in 2022, so that we could go through it. Alex obviously did his first, so he was completely blind. I knew he had done his list, I just didn't look at it until I'd done my own list and added it to the spreadsheet at the end, so that we could do this independently, which makes it even more interesting that best story has maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, maybe it just says the type of games we played this year, but
did not play a lot of story games this year.
So the best 5 story games that we think we played this year are Inscription, Firewatch, Wind Waker, Prey, and Binary Domain. Where will we start, Alex? Do you know where I would like to start? I want to start with Binary Domain, because that game has no right to have as good a story as it has. I think it is a really, really great story, that one.
I think if I cast my mind back to the actual podcast, which I've tried to be doing today, I haven't listened to any in prep for this. I'm pretty sure my opinion of the story at the time was that the overarching part of it, like the idea, the world, the general arc that the narrative goes on, is great, but the interactions between the characters is what lets it down.
Yes,
because some of them are just really annoying.
Yeah, and the interactions between Big Bo and the Chinese sniper were like gross, I think, at times. Yeah. And also, I know this is best story, but I just want to drop that in. It is just a not as good, like gameplay wise. It's just not as good as Gears of War. It's like shooting for that type of game, and it's a very good game. But I think because we've all played Gears of War recently, haven't we?
Yeah. Surprisingly, not this last year either. That I
No,
felt
it's
like that
another
was
one.
a 2022 thing, but no.
The only time I have played is because remember we went through it. We were trying to play some Horde
Oh
pre-Christmas, and we
yeah.
still haven't managed to do that. So maybe we will. But yeah, I booted up some Gears of War 2 for that recently, and even Gears of War 2 feels nicer and snappier than Binary Domain. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about the story. And yeah, I think you've reminded me there, and I ultimately do agree with you. The overarching, and it's a really interesting story about what life and what sentience means, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's a real proper sci-fi story that uses I don't know, is there race discussions
Oh yes.
in there? Yeah,
That's
it's a real
definitely
proper,
something that we picked up on was like racism or like otherism or whatever it was, where
yeah,
fear of sort of difference or
yeah.
outsiders. I remember we did have some good laughs about how somebody was born. Was it Faye, the Chinese sniper
Oh
woman? Because
yeah,
she's
she's half
half robot,
robot.
but we didn't know
Yeah,
how that worked.
we did
How do you
not know.
impregnate a robot woman, and what womb? Because that means that the guy who created them would have had to put a womb inside all the robots for it to work. Bizarre.
Yeah, let's.
Now, there's a lot of nonsense in that game, but the general premise of loads of robots who don't realize they're robots suddenly find out they're robots is pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah, I think
Although
so.
I think we also agreed that they were probably built as adults and given false memories rather than little
Yeah,
kids who then grow all up without ever like skinning their knee and seeing some fucking wiring
you would
under it.
have to imagine like someone out playing
Yeah,
football and getting like a real bad leg break,
yeah,
just circuit
that
boards
would,
hanging out.
yeah, yeah.
I
So
would
that's not going to win.
no, it's
I
not
think
going
we
to
should
win.
probably you should probably cut it right now.
Yeah, I
I felt
think
like that was a desperation job from me. I chucked it in. Out of all we played 20 games this year for the listeners, and I think the only other one that I even really considered for this was Elden Ring, but I actually don't give a shit about the Elden Ring story. Probably good and has loads of lore, but don't
yeah,
care.
I think probably overall it has the best story of the Souls games in my, like, I felt like I was sort of loosely
Mm.
following it from
Hmm.
or at least loosely following the major beats, but yeah, for the most part I was like, I'm not going to understand what this is. My favorite, and I was just trying to skip past what it would be. The bits I did enjoy about Elden Ring was the sort of the stuff that is really great about most of the Souls games, and this it's the sort of like, what do you call it, emergent storytelling, or like you'll stumble
Mm.
across, like there's a bit that for some reason sticks out in my mind in which I stumbled across a sort of, it looked like a druid circle in which like all these sort of wizardy people were standing around it doing a spell, and in the middle of the spell they had like this sort of reanimated corpse coming back to life that you stumble across in sort of the first big area. And I loved that sort of thing, thinking like, what is happening here? What are they trying to
Yeah.
do? If I just stayed, like, would something happen or would it not? That's the storytelling I like in the Souls games, rather than trying to figure out what the fuck is going on with some big spider demon that's trying to like come out of a red moon or something like that.
Yeah. It's very Game of Thrones in that way, in that every
Yes.
single character in Game of Thrones will have a huge backstory to them that if you read the books, you may know, and it
Yeah.
may tell you what it is. Like if you read the item descriptions in an Elden Ring or whatever, but you're not concerned with that once you start watching Game of Thrones. You just want to see a man's head get
Yeah.
squished or some tits.
Yeah.
So in Elden Ring, it's like I just want to do all the boss fights really, and if I read all the stuff and the lore, it's all there, and it's probably really good. But the way those games tell their story is not really conducive to an engaging narrative. It's
No,
only
not for
engaging
me.
if you purposely go out of your way to engage with it or watch Vati video. There's no,
Yeah.
it's the only way I ever really know what's going on in those games.
The
So
other one I enjoyed was it
I
was
felt we had slim pickings this year.
yeah, it was one of the it's one of the this will be the last one I talk about because it's probably not interesting hearing me talk about my moments in Elden Ring. It's when you and I were playing co-op that day and we stumbled across the Eye of Sauron in the sky. So then we spent
That's one of the
ages-
coolest bits of the game. Yeah.
Yeah, we spent a long time trying to so we sort of figured out organically what was happening because there's an area where you started going, is it madness really quickly, and we
Yeah.
figured out that it was the Eye of Sauron, and we had to stay covered from it and stuff like that. So we managed to sneak our way up, explore the town, and sort of kill the eye. That's that sort of story. It's a story of two lads going on an adventure rather than the actual game ourselves. Is this an automatic? Is this an obvious jumping point talking about lads going on an adventure to talk about Wind Waker now?
Yeah. So we are cutting binary domain, aren't we?
Yes.
Yeah, and we know Wind Waker's a game we've only just covered in the last couple of episodes because of its anniversary, and I think we've both agreed that it's up there with the best Zelda stories in that it's just different enough from the typical formula and adds in elements that are not what you typically associate with that type of fantasy action adventure game. It's not all demon lords. I mean, it is, but it's not all princesses and whatnot. It's grounded in a sort of pirate style swashbuckling adventure rather than Hyrule Field and Hyrule Castle and all that kind of stuff. Again, even though Hyrule Castle was in it, I'm talking myself out of liking the story as I say all these things. Well, but I think it's definitely out there with the best Zelda stories. As we said, it's far better than Breath of the Wild, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think for me the two sort of jump out points is I think games like this and Zelda games, in my experience, are at their best when they are being pure sort of joyous adventure, encouraging exploration and wonder, and I think for me that this game did that. It does a great thing in that it finds a way to make you want to interact with every island you come across, and I think it's the same thing that hooked both of us. I would hazard a guess with Sea of Thieves, and that there is something inherently captivating about what adventures might be over the horizon when you get on a boat. There's just something. I don't know how to describe this, but just the sense of adventure you get when you're jumping on a boat and you're off to explore, I think, is really, really powerful for me in this Zelda in Wind Waker. And the other thing is it tied together the let's put in sneer quotes the lore of the Zelda games in a way that I wasn't expecting. And actually, when I realized that I was exploring one of the few previous Zelda games that I'd ever played, and I was like, oh my god, they've tied this together in a way that I wasn't expecting. I actually quite enjoyed that.
Yeah, it's quite dark. It's like a post-apocalyptic Zelda game, which is mad to think of. When you look at how bright and cheerful it is, but you're actually playing in the flooded remains of an entire kingdom where everybody died except a few got to stand on a mountain.
Yeah. How do you think this compares to Prey? Because I guess that's looking at this list. That's what we're talking. We've basically got we've got our first two that we'll discuss, I guess, after this. And then for the third spot in the final three, it's really a toss up between Wind Waker and Prey, isn't it?
Yeah, and Prey is probably the one thing I felt I almost should go back and look at the story for or listen to the podcast on, because a lot of the moment-to-moment beats I don't really remember from Prey. I just remember that it definitely had a proper story in it, and it was the beginning of the game where you suddenly realise that none of it was real is quite cool. I don't necessarily think the end of it was satisfying for me, as I will get to later, where it all just becomes like the whole thing was a simulation. I'm not entirely sure I like that part of it, but in its sort of Bioshock light premise, I'm a big fan of certainly the way that its story dictates how the game looks and feels. Is its biggest plus point in that column.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. For me, the beginning of Prey, when you sort of wake up, do the loop, and then you wake up again, and then you realise that not always as it seems, and there's a lot of like fakery going on. I think that's possibly one of the best openings, and I'm trying not to be hyperbolic because I know I've got a tendency to do it, but it's a phenomenal opening that I think would be better than most games out there. this is a thing, is that as I get older, I'm becoming increasingly aware with the fact that I think these sort of open world exploration, even Metroidvania type games, which I kind of think this is sort of shooting for,
Yeah.
is that it's difficult and not many games do it well. I think The Witcher is probably one that does it well, but a game that has a sort of overarching story and manages to keep me engaged and remember what is happening. So like if I
Yeah.
like do something, then you're coming back 40 hours later or 20 or even 10 or 4, whatever, and then you're meant to pick up where you left off. There's the it used to be the favorite saying in video games, ludonarrative dissonance, in which like
Hmm.
GTA suffers from this, and which it like the way the character acts and behaves on screen is at odds with what's going on around them and the story that's unfolding around them, and it's just this sort of open world nature makes it difficult to sort of tie these things together. Ways that I've seen it done well, again to like sort of link back the GTA one, is to give you story beats and bursts. So like with GTA, when you're doing the heists and stuff, for example, it'll unload a whole load of story in quick succession, so you'll spend longer stints playing the story. Whereas I found Prey sort of just tried to drip feed me things
Yeah, there
over
was no
the
real
whole game.
cutscenes in it or anything. It's
No,
just the occasional chat with somebody, really, isn't it?
and that's a tough thing. That's a tough way to do story, I think, when you are trying to. Because you're right, the story is interesting and it has something quite unique to say, certainly in comparison with other video games. Um,
Yeah.
and I think we were quite
That's it.
disappointed by the end of it. One, because it does sort of fall apart a little bit, but two, because of the way it was received. I don't think we'll ever see a sequel to this, will we? Really?
No, no, and the way that it ended also kind of made the way you can strive for different endings before the real ending kind of makes that almost seem meaningless because
Yeah.
it was all just a test of the sort of sentient robots that are trying to turn you into a mix of the whatever the monsters are and a human.
Mm-hmm. I would say as well for me that, because I know like I find it odd that we're sort of comparing um, Wind Waker's story to Prey's story, because I guess in terms of like, I don't know, I don't want to say quality, but like the most story, we're talking about best story here and not the most story.
Yeah,
Obviously, I
that's
think
fair.
Prey has probably got the most to say and it says more interesting things, but for the type of game it is, I think Wind Waker's for me worked slightly better because it just says you're on an adventure, someone's got your sister, off you go, and then as you sort of explore the world, they sort of bolt on a little bit, and it never gets complicated. It's always very, very simple. But at no point was I ever like, "What am I doing here? Why am I
Yeah,
doing this?"
exactly.
It was always
Exactly.
clear why I was doing it.
Hmm.
Um,
And weirdly as well, like Wind Waker is a game that obviously has a map, but very rarely will do any kind of. You can't really mark things on the map. You
mhm.
can't set objectives and waypoints and things like that. You don't do obvious side quests that you tick off boxes for or anything. And it's very much a game that is focusing on being a game, as you
Mhm.
say. So it keeps it very, very simple, and it has to then try and funnel the player through the objectives in a very basic, non-intrusive way.
Mhm.
And yet it does it so much less video gamey than God of War, which basically
Yeah.
outright has characters just telling you you should probably do some of this first.
Oh, you
Whereas
don't
Wind
have this
Waker
yet.
still grounds it in like the sort of whimsical epic narrative of, you must go here and unlock this sacred power to open this sealed door with the sage who will play his magical instrument, and the song will allow you to enter the temple and rescue it keeps it all like that rather than making it too blatantly gamified like God of War does, where it's just people telling you the answers to puzzles all the time. So it's in a way that it presents its story, I think is very commendable in that it keeps the focus on you exploring and having the
Mhm.
adventure, and it just kind of organically happening around you. If you scurry off somewhere, something else may happen.
Yeah. But then, I guess on the flip of it, there's moments in Prey that will really stick with me.
Mhm.
Like the sort of unfolding narrative around your brother. There's that bit where you,
They absolutely turn your brother into a really sympathetic character
yeah,
from being clearly a sort of a bad guy at the beginning that you think you're going to have to off, and he ends up being a lot more sympathetic by the end.
even the sort of interactions with your so-called self that happen throughout the game, I think, are quite
Hmm.
interesting. In that
I
you're not
like the mad chef as
the
well.
mad chef. Yeah, you're not sure if you can, not even sure if you can trust yourself at some points of the game, which I think you're right.
Yeah,
The mad chef is interesting. Then there's the guy that your brother sends in to go and get you.
yeah.
And there's so many ways you can sort of deal with him. You can just sort of
Hmm.
outright kill him. You can set up a chain of events that leads to his death, or you can try and save his life by like dragging him into an escape pod and stuff like that. And then
Or you can sort of wipe his memory to before
that's
he
right,
knew you were
yeah,
a threat, so that he then all he knows is how to fly a plane and get you out, and you can kind of utilize his skills whilst sort of erasing the fact that you're supposed to be enemies with him.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I do. I would probably put Prey over Wind Waker here, even though I didn't in my 1 to 5. But um,
yeah. Let's do it.
and the acting of Prey as well, I think is
Yeah,
great. Like so many good performances in that game, especially I think Alex. Is his name Alex? I
Alex,
don't know what
you,
his name.
yeah, Alex, you,
Yeah,
why you,
his brother. His brother is really well done.
I, yeah, I think I ultimately agree with you. I think I put Prey. Oh, I did put Prey above Wind Waker. Um,
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
I think I would put Prey. I like I say, I still have issues with the delivery. But I think ultimately the story is very, very good. And I do also agree with you that the way that the story plays out does make a lot of things feel pointless, which is a bit of a shame.
Mm. Yeah, because I like the different endings you can achieve. I think are really cool.
Because
But
I
that you can end
remember,
the game really early, can't you? Just by getting in the escape pod and buggering off,
yeah,
and
you can.
then they just sort of turn you. And when they turn the simulation off at that point, you can even kind of hear a hint of them admitting it's a simulation, that you're not the correct test subject. They need to try again.
Hmm.
He says something like, "Oh, it's not the one, but let's try again," or something, and then the game just ends.
It's
It's
the
quite cryptic at that point, but then when you know what's going on, it makes sense as why that ends the way that it does.
it's a really interesting thing, and it. I don't know. I guess it ultimately comes down to personal preference, but I find that when like video games and movies obviously have different ways that they can tell stories, but because of the short nature of movies, I mean, they are getting a bit longer these days, but let's say 2.5, 3 hours for a really in-depth story drama in a movie. And you're in and out, so like actually you can do a lot there, and you can take a lot of risks, and you could do some quite controversial things because the buy-in from the viewer is quite small. I think the risk you have with video games, and it's the same. I remember many, many moons ago when we were podcasting and talking about LA Noire. At the end of LA Noire, the spoilers, the main character dies, and nothing really changes as far as I can remember. And basically, it was just like, yeah, you tried to start corruption, but you died and you failed. So
They give you a funeral, don't they?
yeah, and I remember coming away from thinking, I've just spent what 40 hours with this character, maybe, like, and you're just going to do that to me. You're just going to make that. You're basically going to render everything I've done pointless. It's annoying.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Prey maybe doesn't go over that line, but it certainly skirts right up to it for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think
So yeah.
it maybe makes the top three, but for me it's the third, solid third.
I think I agree completely.
Which brings us to our other two, which we're looking at: Inscription and Firewatch. Which one do you want to start with, Alex?
Let's do Firewatch.
Firewatch, the story is really all it has. Well, and all in most,
Yeah.
I suppose.
Yeah,
It's
true.
quite a visually pretty game.
The story really, as you say, being all that it has, needed to be engaging, and it needed to be delivered well.
Mm-hmm.
And the voice performances by Rich Sommer, and I'm not sure who the female actress was, but
She's famous.
the two of them, yeah, were excellent, like really excellent. Easily the best performance of probably any game that we've covered on this podcast
Yeah,
up to now.
probably. Sorry, I'm looking up Firewatch IMDb because I will know this female.
What's the characters' names? What
it's
are their
Sissy
names
Jones. I don't think we will know her.
again?
Oh no,
So
we
who are
do.
the
We
characters?
do. It's Sissy Jones. It's the person that played the little boy's mum in the Walking Dead game.
The little boy's mum.
Yeah, what's she called? Oh, and she also played the main character in what's that Walking Dead like that we absolutely loved back in the day? I'm gonna have to.
Not Wolf Among Us.
No.
Gonna say.
Let's have a look. So she is Delilah in Firewatch. She is Joyce Price in Life is Strange, and she's Katja in The Walking Dead. That's probably their thing.
Oh, Life is Strange. Yeah.
And she's also in God of War Ragnarok. She plays additional voices, so she's kind of it.
Yeah, she does.
Yeah, she does. Yeah, sorry, I think I derailed you there by.
So it's Delilah, and what's the guy's name?
It is Rich Sommer. He plays Henry.
Henry, that's it.
That's right. I think the interesting thing about this, and ultimately in media, it's not that interesting, but it's the first game that I remember doing this and doing this quite effectively, is a sort of flawed protagonist in that, like, I don't want to say he's a bad person because he's not. He's just someone that has found himself in a situation that they're wholly unequipped to cope with, and he handles it in probably the worst way he can. But ultimately, he realizes that. And then it's an interesting sort of cut towards the end because you sort of have this relationship with Delilah that develops over the course of the game. And if you're like, like when you're going around and you sort of find that there's like the guy that lives in the cave and he's sort of made a sort of character profile of everyone.
Yeah.
And you read about Delilah's character profile and saying that she's cheats on her boyfriend, she's maybe got alcohol issues and stuff like that. And like, I think the way that the game finishes is really quite powerful because it really plays into the sort of nature of the characters. So like, I'm not sure Henry, I don't know, it's up in the air whether Henry decides to go and try and fix his mistakes or not. And Delilah acts exactly in character and she runs away when Henry tries to sort of move the relationship on a little bit. And which is contrast, how the game starts where Henry has just run away. Yes, true. I never picked up on that. How did the kid stuff affect you in Firewatch? I don't think it landed with me as much as the sort of interpersonal relationship between Henry and Delilah.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I completely agree. You didn't have enough time to you didn't know anything about the kid either. It's more of the dad, the way that the dad character sort of began to blossom out into what you see as why he did it and what he was like was actually quite interesting. That was more interesting than, just the sadness of seeing a dead kid in a cave, more of how his dad then sort of lost his mind a little bit in dealing with it and just could never leave the forest or whatever it is that we're in. Mm-hmm. Just kind of found himself tied to that, almost like he can't let go, and he's gone a bit mad.
So,
and he gets painted as the antagonist when he's really not.
No. Can you think back to, because this was when we covered this for the podcast, this was the second time I played it. If I remember right, this is the first time you'd played it. Is that right?
Yes.
Did the stuff get you properly? Can you remember when they start talking about the sort of test facility that's got the gate round it, and then you sort of discover writing about yourself, and you discover someone's been listening into your stuff, and you start being paranoid about being followed and watched and stuff? Did all that sort of stuff work? And because you're sort
that's
of
the strongest part of the game. I think.
You're trying to work out, am I being watched, or is this just me sort of getting cabin fever? Is that the right word?
Well, he doesn't even seem to know if he trusts his own thoughts at that point. He doesn't even know if he's really what the voice in his head really is, and if she's real, and he thinks he may be imagining her. He really sort of starts to unravel at that point. It really does pick up at that. And I genuinely felt tension, for him and what was actually going to happen. Obviously, it doesn't really come to anything in the end. It's all
Sort of working themselves into
just the notes
frenzies.
of the crazy dad guy, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's his notes, and I remember Henry gets knocked out at one point. It's just, is it Ned? I think.
Mm.
It's basically just thinking you're getting too close and tries to scare him off. Basically,
Yeah.
tell me about Inscription and why that's going to be the other one on our top 3 list.
Yeah, Inscription is a game that you could never really be sure again of where it's going and what's actually going on. Everything is so concealed and dark and mysterious. And the fact that it at the beginning when it starts interspersing its clips of the guy who's actually found the copy of the game.
Yeah,
And it's just like him doing YouTube videos of him like collecting the cards and getting stuff sent to him and going to try and dig up discs and stuff. It started off a little bit goofy. When they first show it, you just think, oh, what is this like silly little incursion into this like weird YouTuber's nerdy life? But by the end, it becomes again. I mean, the end of that game is fucked up.
Yeah.
He gets killed at the end, right? Is it someone just busts in through his door
Someone
and just
opens
shoots
the door
him?
and shoots him, yeah. And then takes the disc and leaves.
Yeah, and then how the sort of the game itself is trying to delete itself, and then you have to start all the enemies that you thought were like these evil characters that were trying to break out into the world and take it over suddenly start just wanting to have one more game of cards with you as they're all being erased from existence. This was a game that's probably equally good in both story and gameplay departments, but
yeah,
both of them are like so intriguing throughout. Like I never felt bored. I never felt like I didn't want to see what was coming next in this game. I was constantly wanting to move on, to play more cards and to see more story.
Yeah,
it's just a really gripping video game.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I'd forgotten about the sort of YouTube videos that you'd sort of stumble across, and I love how you're right. It goes from being quite goofy, and then there's like a point where it flips, much like the gameplay does very, very often throughout your time with Inscription. It just sort of flips and goes from being this sort of slightly goofy, kind of silly thing to being quite deeply sinister, and you're like, what is going on here? And then that sort of really just the pacing's great because like you start off and you're sort of laughing and giggling along, engaged with the narrative, and then something happens and then everything changes and just like the weight of the game changes, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think for me this is the best game story wise we played in the year.
Yeah, I completely forgot that the guy's name was Luke Carter.
Oh yes.
I'm just trying to have a quick look over the plot just to see if I can remind us of anything that we haven't remembered. I mean, the fact that that the game changes as well. You know, when it goes into that like 16-bit RPG for a while, and I remember thinking at the time that I didn't enjoy that anywhere near as much because it started to just throw all the different types of cards at you, didn't it?
Yeah.
So you've done the whole bit with the Leshy, the guy in the cabin.
Yep.
That's the first sort of, real hurdle you get over, and then it just completely changes the style of the game, visual in every way. Just visually, the cards are totally different. You've got all these different, like you've got the ghost cards and the skeleton stuff, and the robot as well. And then it kind of goes back again to being that sort of 3D version again, where you're in like the robot's little facility instead.
Yeah, and you're walking around. Is this where you can start leveling up cards properly? Yeah, and you've got to like move. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Then there's that really odd bit at the end, obviously, when the game's sort of falling apart and everything starts to delete itself, where you start moving like there's like actual people or like 3D renders of like people that you're moving around. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
That I remember.
That's one of the games you never actually got to do.
Yeah, and I didn't know if I was playing it properly or not, but I don't know if there is a way to play that properly.
I wish there was, but no, I don't think there is. And I think that's obviously after the bit where you're fighting all the robot characters.
That's right.
Where he starts taking over the game, doesn't he? And then it starts to throw all that like meta shit at you, like he's using cards that are your Steam friends list, and there's the part where he threatens to delete your game or something, doesn't it? And it just puts a text file in the game thing that just says like that it's not really gonna delete the game, but it makes it look like it was going to. Because it's sorted, that links into the actual game that Luke's playing, where he's supposed to be deleting it, and it's going to delete it on your machine as well. It's just so clever.
I also like how, so like the Leshy and those sort of guardians of the game, like the Leshy initially feels like a really quite a scary madman, and I think he is. But then there's towards the end of the game, you're like, was he actually the bad guy? Probably not, because it was them that was keeping the cat under control, wasn't it? Who turns out to be like the real bad guy in the game.
Yeah,
interesting.
Because you even get those cards as well at the beginning, don't you? They start talking to you and saying, "Yeah, you need to help me get out of here" or whatever. And some of them, parts of them, is like out in the actual cabin as well. Yeah, so clever.
Yeah, it's got to be winner for best story for me.
Yeah.
So to me, that gives us our final, which is the winner of best story of 2022. The Winner Is You podcast is Inscription with the. Is this 2 and 3 or are these notable runners up?
Yeah, I think so.
Being Firewatch at number 2 and Prey at number 3. Alex, do you want to bring us in to best gameplay?
Yes. So the nominees that we have from the 5 that we each picked are Luigi's Mansion, Super Metroid, Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker, Inscription, Elden Ring, Diddy Kong Racing, and Symphony of the Night. We've obviously just talked about Wind Waker.
Yeah.
And Inscription, actually. Now, Wind Waker, the gameplay there, it is fantastic. It hasn't dated itself really at all. Zelda games themselves have largely stuck to that formula forever. So it kind of feels as playable as most of the 3D Zelda games. Inscription, I am slightly disappointed in myself that I didn't include that in best gameplay, probably because I looked back at it and instantly just thought of it as this just like mind fuck. But the card game itself is actually brilliant.
The card game's brilliant. I really enjoy the sort of roguelike part of like the first third of the game where you're moving the wooden guy up and you're playing this game against Leshy. That was at a period where I was playing a lot of card games and sort of messing around with roguelikes. It just sort of really tickled my nuts in that regard. And then in terms of gameplay, how it just totally turns itself on its head and becomes almost like a Pokemon game in the second section of the game. I thought this was really strong. And I think the only reason it's not number 1 here for me it was number 3, is because I think the 2 games ahead of it were just like really top moments in my year in gaming. So it was beaten out by just 2 seminal titles for me, really. But I did love Inscription gameplay. It was a really strong contender for gameplay.
Yeah, and obviously by the nature of us having more nominees this time, which means we're not as aligned as we were for the first category. So this one's going to be harder to cut stuff.
I would say we leave it just now and we pick another game and discuss that, and we can sort of loop back around. I don't know, for like ease, we've got the same sort of top 2 nominees, which would be Diddy Kong Racing and Symphony of the Night. Will we just move them across to the in category right now? Do you want to talk about them just now? Or will we talk about them when we're doing our final 3?
Yeah, because they've already set themselves in a position. So we will we'll put them over there already.
And then we'll discuss we'll discuss the sort of
why they are where they are.
Yeah. Alex, throw some Elden Ring chat at me, because I'm open to this one.
I'm a huge fan of the way the Souls games play. And I don't think any of them play better than Elden Ring. It mixed it put that formula into an open world that was the biggest. Well, let's think of it as it's a Souls game without being called a Souls game, and it's open world.
Mm-hmm.
So there was those two things there that potentially could have gone against it and made me slightly wary of, is this going to be anywhere near as good? Because it's not got the Souls name in it, so it's not in that universe, and it's now open world, which how are they going to fit their usual From Software tricks of level design, shortcuts, looping around on each other, bonfire, all that kind of shit? How is that going to work in an open world? And not only did it work incredibly well, it's probably one of the greatest open worlds, I think, that I've seen in terms of just how it is a fully overwhelming and immersive world to be in. There's nothing that feels video game about it. Everything is explorable. You can go absolutely anywhere you want. There's no helping you with anything. There's no ticking off, loads of shit on a map. It just is what it is, and you can just go anywhere, and stuff happens everywhere. It's like there are moments where it's kind of sparse, and you are going through just the scenery for a bit, but those moments of calm are all the more not enjoyable, but needed in a game that's as ridiculously difficult and can be quite oppressive against you. When you do stumble across something, you're very rarely seeing the same thing twice. Think of how many enemies there are in this game compared to God of War, just off the top of my head, for something that we've just been playing, which admittedly does have more enemy variety in it than its predecessor did.
Well, Prey is another one, because it's going to come up in our next category. It's a game that it's probably, it's about half the length and has about 5% of the enemy variety, if that, in the game.
Yeah, I mean, if you think
as you dig into Elden Ring, I would say, and this is not to undermine your point, because I totally agree with you, you do start to see sort of repeating bosses quite often in the smaller dungeons. In them, there's quite a lot of repeating enemies and repeating bosses, but given the size of it, there's a lot of times I've fought some salamander looking thing with a different name, but that said, these things are few and far between, and I totally agree with you. I just thought that was probably worth mentioning.
But if you think of a game like something like Breath of the Wild, right, or Wind Waker, Breath of the Wild is something that people are going to probably relate Elden Ring to, because they're both taking a franchise that was already there and then plopping it in a more open environment. But Zelda games have had the same types of enemies in them since day dot.
Well, yeah.
Whereas From Software basically build a complete bestiary every single time they make a game and fill it with all these ridiculously weird and wonderful creatures. And in this case as well, they also give you a million different ways to fight all of them, because the amount of freedom you have to build a character in any way that you want. You don't even need to min max. Everything is viable. Everything is powerful. Everything can be broken if you think about it enough. It's just a wonderful creation in terms of this medium of something to play. Like I say, the story, but gameplay, I think it's almost faultless for a From Software Souls like.
Wind Waker on steroids, isn't it? Which I think ultimately means we need to cut Wind Waker from this on my list, because it's just, in terms of creating a sense of wonder, exploration, and encouraging discovery, it encourages players to sort of just check around that corner to see if there's anything hidden. Just hit your sword off that wall in case there's a hidden passageway down there. Why is this weird vampire lady cuddling me? It just sort of drops these little tidbits of information in there, which are enough for millions of people to then go off on this quest to try and figure out the answer to what they're looking at, or get to the end of something they've discovered, or they'll be out thinking, right, I'm going to go and level up, and then they sort of stumble across this secret room, and then fast forward 3 hours and they're just coming out sweaty and beleaguered but victorious of having just sort of slogged their way through this dungeon. And I think I agree with you. It creates, I have we stumbled across Elden Ring? Is not stumbled across it, but is that I the more we talk about Elden Ring, the more I'm thinking it has to be the third of the top three, the final entry. But we haven't even discussed Super Metroid, Wind Waker, or Luigi's Mansion yet.
Yeah. What was I going to say? Just quickly before we finish up Elden Ring for the time being, one of the things I remember most vividly about that game is when you and I both. Well, it's me. I think it was more you because I watched it happen to you. I think where you get sucked into that treasure chest, and it like takes you to that weird area with those horrible centipede men.
Yeah.
And it's such an effort at that stage of the game to get back out of there. And when you do get out of there, you end up in that fire area that was just like terrifying to the where the fuck have I come out? Like I desperately needed to get out of there. Like I can't. This is just by looking at this in the horizon and the distance and the scenery and the vistas, I know I'm going to get fucked up. I need to get out of here. And luckily, you were able to warp at that point once you get there. But obviously, you come back later, and it is what it is. It's just another part of the game. But at that point, it was so terrifying that I'd just been dumped in some random place. I had no idea where I was. And because you've not unlocked that part of the map, you're just a little dot in the middle of all the fog of war. You've got no idea why you're so far away.
Yeah, and it's just a master in sort of game design as well, because I'm even thinking of like how the game teaches you to play the game, and we've spoken about this endlessly, in which it's one of these games that will not bend to you, and it will keep bashing you over the head until you figure it out. And it's like when you come out of the sort of starter dungeon, and it basically places you in front of an enemy that is just going to annihilate you.
Yep.
So you know, like, this game is not messing about. That, stay away from him, he's dangerous. And then you sort of sneak around him, and then you see enemies like him later on, and it makes you think twice about attacking him. I remember the first time you come across one of those carriages being pulled by those big giant things, and I'm like, I really want to see what's going on there, but am I brave enough to go over there? That stuff is really great. And this game's been out, over a year now, and there's still things being discovered. It's only been recent that fan theory is sort of surfaced about that the bears, are they turning into a dragon? Is that what people think?
Oh, yeah. I think you were telling me about this.
I think this has got to be number 3. Is there anything...
When did Elden Ring come out? It came out in February.
So it's just about a year.
Yeah, it's just getting there, yeah. I'm delighted to have it as number 3, but let's give dues to Luigi's Mansion, because that is just probably let down by being slightly repetitive.
Yeah,
it's basically a mechanic utilized throughout the whole game, but it's just so fun. It's just such a fun video game, and the variety of the ghosts that you have to take down is what I think elevates that above all the other Luigi's Mansion games, which don't have that idea in them. They mix different ideas every time they've done the game. But yeah, I just had such a fun time from start to finish with Luigi's Mansion, even though I think the gameplay is something that, as I said, does get a bit repetitive, but it's so well done. That initial idea is all they needed. Clearly, they agree with that.
And this is a fine line. I think we've spoken about it a couple of times. There's a fine line for me between making me rerun the same area over and over again and getting sick of seeing it, versus rerunning an area over and over again and actually just feeling like I'm getting more in tune and more understanding and gaining more knowledge of the area that I'm in. I mean, Dead Space is another example of a game that does it really well, in which they make you move around the ship, or I guess we're talking about Luigi's Mansion, so you move around the house to the point that if someone said go here, I would know the exact route to get there. And at no point did that I can remember that ever feeling boring or dull or tedious. It became tedious to an extent for me because I couldn't find a bloody key that I was looking for that you found. I think that's
cut out a massive bit, yeah.
But yeah, the game did a great job of drip feeding and sort of familiarizing you with this mansion, and to the point that the mansion becomes a character in its own right. And I think, that it's a really, really, really well done game. It's like you're saying, maybe it could have been a bit quicker. I don't know. But yeah, I think for like moving about, because obviously he's quite a trudger, his old Luigi, when he's going around the house. But yeah, this is a great game. Gameplay wise, it's fun. It's fun to engage with the ghosts. It's fun trying to figure out the puzzles. Even
Yeah,
yeah, it's just a really inventive game that is deserving of being spoken about on our Game of the Year podcast, but not the top
absolutely.
three.
No.
Wind
I
Waker
guess.
we've spoken about. We're going to cut that too, just to sort of round it up. I think ultimately Elden Ring does everything it does probably better, so that's probably why it doesn't make it. But yeah, I love it.
Yeah, and I think probably complaints that were labelled at Wind Waker at the time were that it did feel very, very similar to Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. They didn't really do a lot to change up the combat or anything in that game, but it still just felt so natural and intuitive, using things like the boomerang and the bow and arrow and the leaf. There were some cool additions there. The sailing is perfectly nice and enjoyable. We were playing the HD version, but we were talking really about the original, which has some flaws because it was so rushed, and therefore, you can't have a game in the winner of a gameplay category that has a fetch quest at the end because they didn't have time to make any more dungeons.
Yeah. I'm still shocked, and I think I will always be shocked, because thinking that I was coming towards the end of that game, and then they unleash all the Triforce shards that you've got to get on you, and I just assume because it's called a Triforce, or there'll be 3 bits to it. No.
Yeah,
you've got another 8 hours of gameplay, mate.
Yeah. Super Metroid is, for me, it's a classic for a reason. That game will never age. It will never not be playable. It's super tight. The exploration is excellent. Like the upgrades, and it really was sort of the catalyst for modern Metroid. And you can see its roots in everything that they've done since. The first game of Metroid is fine, but this was an absolute masterpiece in that series. Interested to see how you feel it stacks up against Metroid Prime, which I think is another excellent game. I don't know which one you prefer of the two. They're obviously both massively revered. There've been a lot of best game ever lists, but the two of them.
Yeah, I'm not sure actually. I think I probably enjoyed Metroid Prime a little bit more, but I mean, it's close, to be honest with you. Yeah, they're both excellent games, and Super Metroid made me realise why these games, this sort of type of game, is great, if that makes sense. Like, there's other, like, I've sort of dabbled in sort of these Metroidvanias before, and the one that I've probably the closest, other than another one that we've got on this list, or the closest previous to this year that I'd come, was Guacamelee, which is another excellent game. But I don't know, for some reason I could understand why it was great, but it just never grabbed me in a way that Symphony of the Night and the 2 Metroid games did that we played. And I think Metroid Prime maybe just pips it because it's first. I don't know. I was going to say because it's first person, but I don't think that's fair either. I don't know. I like the music, and I perhaps like the environments a little bit better.
Yeah.
I felt like they both did, because the Metroid Prime took a while to get used to the controls, because it was
definitely
using a GameCube controller. I felt the jumping in Super Metroid took a little bit of getting used to, but again, once you get used to
it's quite floaty, that
game.
It's definitely slower and not as tight as Symphony of the Night.
Yeah, loved it. Great, glad we played it. Should be on this top list that we're talking about, but maybe not top 3 for me.
Which one do you want to talk about? I guess we are talking about Metroidvania, so probably that does segue perfectly into Symphony of the Night, which you and I both put as our number 1 game. So that is, spoiler, that is going to win.
Probably going to win. I just think this game grabbed me in a wholly unexpected way. I went into this thinking I knew what I was going to get, and thinking I knew what I was how I was going to feel about it, but it's it's happened a few times over the course of us doing this podcast. I mean, the Resident Evil games, and there's other ones later on that we'll speak about. But like when I just think, oh no, I get why there's a big fandom around these games, and I used to look forward to my lunch break so that I could switch it on and stream it and hope that you would drop by and we could chat about it while I was playing. And it's, to me, it's the right balance between, I mean, the design is almost perfect of the game, like the way that you can, the castle design layout, again, it makes you go back and forth, and ultimately you end up learning
and upside down.
Upside down, yeah. The enemy variations are great. The being able to, it sort of drip feeds you powers in a way that kept the game feeling fresh. And I thought the balance between there's areas of the game that are quite challenging, but I thought the balance between just being fun, engaging, encouraging exploration, and then periodically coming at you with something quite difficult was quite well done.
Yeah.
I just loved this game.
It's phenomenal. The addition of the RPG elements to it as well. I mean, we said it at the time on the podcast, it shouldn't be forgotten that this was the first Metroid game that played in this way. Mm-hmm. This is, the birth of this genre. We're talking about Super Metroid and this being those two catalysts for the whole thing to kick off from there in the way that it did, because all previous Castlevania games were very linear, level-based games, where you're just doing one stage after another. Yes, the theme is obviously very, very similar here, but having the map that unlocks as you go, having the items that you need to unlock different paths, backtracking, all that kind of stuff, and the RPG elements to it were all a first in this game for the series. And obviously they were probably borrowed from Metroid or Super Metroid. But it's the way that Castlevania has been ever since, and it's never gone back to the opposite style. So, and it's honestly never been bettered by Castlevania, and probably never will be. Yeah,
for me it's the best one, and
but there are a lot of great ones that I'd be very interested to see you try.
Yeah, maybe we'll come to them at some point.
Have you seen what I've written in the spreadsheet?
Yeah. Oh no, I haven't. Have you got more? Have we got a?
Yeah, to take a look next to Dino Crisis in the spreadsheet.
On podcast games list.
Just on the game, on the 2020 awards bit that I'm on right now. I think you're in it.
Oh.
I've just typed something.
Yes. Great shout.
So I would like to, if we make that a theme again this year, as we had a very brief theme of it, we played Super Metroid followed by Symphony of the Night. I would very much like to posit that we play maybe one of the DS Metroid, Castlevania games, or Bloodstained. If you've not played that, I think that needs to be. Yeah. You need to play that if you've not, because I think you'll absolutely love it if you liked Symphony of the Night. But that's for another time.
Another time.
And that is our winner. But our runner-up is also definitely worth talking about, because it is just an amazingly wonderful time that I will hold dearly in my heart till the day I die.
Yeah, this for me is. It's funny. It's always funny when you're doing sort of game of the year lists, when you're comparing games that just have no business being compared together.
Yeah.
But Diddy Kong Racing is just a game that sets out with a plan and delivers on said plan almost flawlessly.
Even though it wasn't actually their plan in the first place, as we said on the podcast,
they sort of stumbled
completely
across
ripped everything up and started again. Yeah.
It does that in a world, because is it fair to say this was a sort of peak kart era? Was this when Crash Team Racing and stuff was coming out, and obviously Mario Kart
that was PlayStation, wasn't it? So Mario Kart 64 had definitely been out before this, so this was Rare's answer to that.
It does a great job of sort of differentiating itself from everything else.
Absolutely.
It's a kart racer that's got boss fights, and the boss fights were such a highlight for me. I used to some of my favourite memories of this year is sitting trying to work out how to beat this boss.
Absolutely.
And it's created a game in which you were sort of rerunning the same sort of boss over and over again, but sort of just trying to figure out. I mean, is it too far to say almost like an Elden Ring? You're trying to figure out what the weak points are in this
Yeah,
person.
best
this
strategies
boss.
and the best. Yeah, you're trying to optimize your route. You were streaming it, and me and I can't remember the guy's name now, but that dude who was watching along,
Yeah.
trying to figure out which balloons you should be grabbing in which order to maximize your attempt, your chance of winning. I loved watching you play this year because it's something I'd played for so many years myself since '97 or whatever it was, and knew so well that to see you learn its ropes at this point in our lives and overcome it as well was it was a highlight of my year for sure.
It handles absolutely fantastically as well. Like
It does.
as good as any other kart racer, even today. Like it,
Yeah.
and I think that's important. And I think that's something I always look out for when we're playing older games. In that, like a good game is always good. Like Super Mario World plays as well today as it always did, and that's what sort of to me stands out between a true classic. And in terms of kart racers, I think Diddy Kong Racing is every bit the kart racing classic, and even like in terms of like when you take the boss fights, when you take the different vehicles, you take the tracks, you take the coin collection, in that like you're always doing something different, and that is you can say that about basically no other kart racer around. It's the single player campaign just has never there are if we're gonna be pedantic here, pedantic. If we're going to be sticklers here, maybe maybe there are probably not very many tracks that I can think of. I think the probably variety is not great, but I never noticed that because every time you come back to a track you've already done, you're either in a different vehicle or you've got a different thing that you have to do. And yeah, it's just done really, really well. Really, really well. Which has to make it number 2 in our list.
I mean, it's definitely got more tracks than Mario Kart 64.
Does it? Okay, so is my feeling of few tracks just unfounded?
I mean, I guess later games probably had more tracks than Diddy Kong Racing, but you've got 5 worlds with 4 tracks each. You've got the 4 battle arenas, you've got the boss arenas, you've got then doing the silver coin challenges on every single one where you have to reroute your way through them all.
Yeah,
it's packed with stuff.
yeah,
absolutely. And then you've got the whole adventure in mirror mode, and you can do the whole adventure in co-op.
And then there's the TT races again.
And then then there's the time trials to unlock the best character in the game. And I said it at the time, and I'll say it again now, that the fact that the game is so heavily weighted around player skill, where you can lap people, there is no randomized items. It's all placed on the track. You can pick the ones that you want. There's such a eschewing of random bullshit that you get so much of in Mario Kart games. That's what makes this timeless, because all you can do as you carry on playing it is get better and get better and get better without any hint of random that's going to ruin anything for you. You can just become excellent at the game, and that's why I love watching speedruns of it because you know that it's all about pure skill.
That's it. Yeah, absolutely. Because I think there's one sort of incarnation where people would see the lack of variety in pickups as a negative, but actually ultimately I see it as a positive, because like you say, there's no blue shell that's going to mess you up. There's no you're in last, we're going to give you some stuff that's going to make you go faster. No, it'll give you the same stuff.
There's no rubber banding at all.
There's no rubber banding. If you make a mistake in later parts of the game, you're as well just starting again, because you're not going to catch them. For some that might be a negative, but for me, once I sort of understood what was going on, it was a complete positive.
Yeah. Not as positive as Symphony of the Night, though, which is our winner of best gameplay of 2022.
With 2022, number 2, Diddy Kong Racing, number 3, Elden Ring.
Indeed. Let's lower the tone somewhat, shall we?
Which brings us on to Alex's fantastically named category, Most Bullshit. Which we've got some good ones in here, actually. Let's give us a quick run through. We've got Millennia's Blade of Michaela, Metroid Prime End Boss, Scorn's Opening Few Hours, the Resi 2 Teenage Boy Style Inventory Management, Praise Ending, Praise Enemy Variation, Medal of Honor Checkpointing, and I've got 2 Wolfenstein 3D ones here. Every level of Wolfenstein 3D and Wolfenstein 3D isn't good anymore. Where do you want to start, Alex?
I think what we could start with is both of our number fives are bosses.
Yes.
Yours is the end boss of Metroid Prime, which probably may have knocked it out of some lists, some of the positive lists for you this year, because I genuinely saw your enjoyment of the game as I watched you play it. I could tell that this wasn't one that was, that you had no bones with it at all. And then all of a sudden, when it got to the bullshit at the end, then you were done and you wanted it over.
I really, really didn't enjoy the end boss, and I've put it at number 5, and it's the reason it's not higher up because I think ultimately I needed to have the same attitude with the end bosses that I had with Diddy Kong Racing. The problem is big in like my issue with the end bosses, I just wasn't good enough, and I just needed to get better. And for the same things that I'm praising Diddy Kong Racing for, and that was spoken about Elden Ring for, absolutely apply to this end boss. So I get it, but for some reason this one just rubbed me completely the wrong way. And rather than thinking, "Oh, I need to do better next time," I was just getting frustrated and I was getting angry. And yeah, I really didn't like it. But the reason I put it at number 5, like I say, is that I just needed to get better at it. I just didn't want to get better at it. I just wanted it to stop. Was the problem?
Yeah, you're right at the end at that point. So, yeah. And whereas Melania Blade of Mikula in Elden Ring is something that I would, if you want to get better at that, that's going to take serious practice. Practice that I couldn't be asked to put in. And luckily, there's a load of summons that you can have to help you that I used, and basically was so overpowered by the time I got to her that she didn't really cause me jip. However, just the very design of that boss is such a cheeky dickhead move, in that not only is she one of the quickest, like most hard-hitting, fast bosses you're going to fight in Elden Ring, she also does constant Scarlet Rot damage to you, and she heals herself every time she hits you. So it's bullshit. That is bullshit. A boss that can heal itself throughout the entire fight just by hitting you, and is doing the worst version that FromSoft has ever done in terms of like the poison build up or whatever in Scarlet Rot, is fucking bullshit. However, I put it at number 5 because I just used my summons and my really overpowered weapons and dicked her.
Absolutely gave it a doing.
But I know that she has been, a big talking point of this year, that she has been a ball ache to a lot of people. Talk about Resident Evil's inventory management. Resident Evil 0, inventory management. Because I completely forgot about this, and you've changed my mind on a lot of what I put in here, because I've forgotten about what you're going to talk about.
This was so you maybe remember why, but for some reason that I've forgotten or deleted from my PTSD addled brain, was that for some reason Resident Evil did away with like the shared inventory box that you could go to safe rooms and sort of collect old items, which seemed smart, I guess, at the time, but actually what that resulted in was you having to do a lot of back and forth, filling up your inventory, walking to the area that you were sort of designating as your base of operations, dumping everything on the floor before doing another trip over to then dump everything on the floor again. And then beyond that, once you'd dumped everything on the floor, sometimes if you had put something beside something else at the wrong angle, trying to pick up the thing you wanted was an absolute royal pain in the neck. And yeah, you ended up having I've called it the Resi Zero Teenage Boy style inventory management, because your inventory management becomes take everything and throw it on the floor. And then it
really is.
Just go and pick it up when you need it. And it was so bad. And what do you think? I was trying to think back when we discussed this game. Was there thinking that
the thinking is that you had 2 characters so you could carry more.
Okay.
And they felt like having item boxes wasn't needed. And I think they maybe also wanted to try and show off the fact that it could handle having all the items out on display. And look, it shows up on the map. So what you're complaining about? But they've never used that again. Everything has gone back to either item boxes or an inventory size that you can increase, which they did not do in Resi Zero either. And I'm totally with you. It is more realistic, of course.
It's just not fun.
No, it's not fun in any way, because there were times when I would, especially if it's a critical item as well. I think if you're going to do that where you're dropping stuff, don't make critical items part of the fucking main inventory.
Yeah.
Because that is nonsense. Especially if you're going to make me carry, what is it, like that hook shot thing that takes up 2 inventory spaces. Like, that is bollocks. And as you said, there are certain rooms where the fixed camera angles obscure where you've dropped it, and you can probably never find it to pick it up again.
And then
It's
if you're trying
awful.
to pass, there's a bit where you're trying to sort of join statues together, and then if your mate's got a full inventory, like you're saying, you're having to pass things, drop something on the ground so that you can pick up another. Oh yeah, it was just a needless faff. And I get it, like I say, like I think I agree with you. Like they're obviously just trying to show off that they can do it, and it is more realistic. But we play video games; it's got to be more.
Yeah.
Fun has to come before realism in almost every scenario.
Yeah,
and it just wasn't.
You've almost literally already opened Pandora's box. Why did you take it away?
Yeah,
like you created the magical floaty box. Why are you taking it away? It's insane. But luckily, not something they ever went back to. But that's a strong contender, because I think I'm going to get rid of Mikola, or Melania, whatever the fuck she's called.
Yeah, well, I'd say let's get rid of Metroid Prime's end boss as well, because
Yeah.
like I say, I think I'm 50% feel justified, 50% understand it's just me that needs to get better at the game.
We've both got Prey in our list as well. You did touch on it earlier.
Yeah, I think
the enemy variation is shit.
It's really
I
bad.
completely agree.
At some point, they just take the same enemy and make it a different color, and that means it's got different powers. And it never changes really throughout the game. Like the enemy you're fighting at the beginning of the game is much the same as the enemy you're fighting at the end of the game. They just sort of get bigger sometimes, like to the point that sometimes I wondered if they just took the same model and made it bigger when they were designing.
But it's not exactly like an overly, intricate model, is it? It's just a black splodge,
which just sticks out to me even more because the rest of the game design of the spaceship is so sort of lovingly crafted, and it's just,
and I don't even care that that's what they are, because that is the threat. The threat is that's what's taken over the ship. That's fine, but you've designed the threat as basically a black circle, and then spaffed it all over the fucking space station.
I will say though, when they are the mini mimics and they're sort of able to turn into different things, that is some of the most effective horror gameplay for me I've played in many a year.
And maybe that's why they're all the same.
Yeah,
because they could technically be very different.
They then make them larger.
It's the larger ones that's the problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think we've already talked about the ending as well of Prey. It's slightly bullshit in that it, as we said earlier, it's kind of rendered all the choices that you've made and what you fought through the game to get to renders that somewhat meaningless. But if that was a film, I'd probably be less annoyed.
Yeah, and to me, it's because it's the buy-in. Right, it's you would sat on your backside and spectated for a couple hours, where you've inhabited the body of this character, for them to say, "Oh, everything you've done was pointless."
Yeah, it was just his memories that you were reliving, and you're not actually that guy at all. And I'm still alive, and I'm his brother, and if that was a film, like I say, I'd probably think that was quite clever, and it is quite clever. I don't actually hate it as an idea that they've set out from from all along. You were just, the world's actually lost, and they did get back in the end, and everything he didn't actually work, and they're trying desperately to undo all of that. But as you've just said, the buy-in that I've already made for it for 20 odd hours makes it a bit of a fuck you. And it's not quite Link's Awakening where he was just asleep.
No.
Or Mario. I think Mario 2 he was asleep where it's all a fucking dream. But it's the next level up.
I think, because I think ultimately the things you do in the game do make quite a significant difference to the world in which they've created, i.e. like the ramifications of your behaviour will be felt for decades or millennia to come because of what you've done and how it's sort of dictating the way they're going to approach what you are. But you never experience that. You're just sort of told about it. and expected to.
And also the robots kind of like the way that they rate you on the actions that you took.
Yeah.
Then it kind of makes it feel like, well, did he actually do that then? Obviously not, because if the real Morgan Yu had done this action, the act that I did, like, you know, when you can
It's
leave that guy in
Morgan,
the
isn't it? I
airlock or
got
whatever.
Morgan and Alex flipped
Alex is
around.
his brother, isn't it? I
Yeah.
think. So if Morgan lets that guy die in the airlock, then you go back and the robot version of that guy is like, fucking hell, what a knobhead, you left me in the airlock. So clearly that's not what actually happened.
Yeah.
So then it becomes just kind of, yeah, like everything that you didn't even necessarily happen. Where it tells you, oh, it's his memories, but then it kind of like it conflates against, or conflates, it doesn't make sense. It conflicts against the fact that they should know that that's what happened.
Mm-hmm.
But you've somehow subverted it. So it's kind of cool that you can subvert the reality of what actually happened, but not when they just go, well, that was a bit naughty of you, wasn't it? You shouldn't have done that. Now I give you a B instead of an A. Yeah. Not the most bullshit, though, I don't think.
Not the most, no, not the most bullshit.
Hard.
Heavy.
Yeah, I feel like Resi's inventory shit is jumped over that for me.
Well, let's tell it.
I'm going to cut it.
Okay, well, I'd say cut both the praise. I think we've given them a good.
Because the enemies are amazing that they can take over anything. They just
don't change in any way.
They just don't look very nice.
Yeah. Scorn's open in a few hours, talking about things that don't look very nice.
Yeah, and I think ultimately this probably doesn't make it to the end either, because you probably had less of a problem with it than I did. But fuck me,
you had quite a visceral reaction to this in a way that
I like strongly disliked it. It was very confusing.
Was the game just not what you were expecting it to be? Was that part of it?
That was part of it, I think. And everything looked the same. I kept getting lost.
Mm-hmm.
I just something was blocking me from being able to get into the mindset to understand what it was expecting of me. The whole bit with the little egg bloke where you're supposed to like drop him from that massive sort of slide puzzle and then push him around on a trolley. Mm-hmm. That's the area that really kind of got me. But having thought about it, like the opening few hours that really put me off the game, I powered through them and got to points of the game later on that were equal parts more enjoyable and less enjoyable. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know if that makes it. And like I said, you didn't have that much of an issue with it. You just kind of figured it out and got on with it, whereas I was sitting there struggling and banging. It's kind of like Metroid Prime's end boss. I kind of did it in a wanna.
Yeah.
And then it took you way longer and you just found it really annoying. So I think that's where we're at with those two things, is one of us struggled, the other one didn't, and therefore opinions won't be the same. Although I do think Metroid Prime's end boss is a bit bollocks as well. I think, so I'm kind of with you there.
I think my ultimately my problem with Scorn is I thought there was bits that didn't quite match. Like that boss fight just sort of comes from nowhere and doesn't really fit with the rest of the game. And the little Krang boss fights. Yeah, and it was ultimately just a bit dull. Like
it was so slow as well.
It was so slow, and the environments were clearly, lovingly, I don't know if that's the right word, or intricately, grotesquely crafted. Yeah. I just didn't think they were very nice to look at because it was all brown and dark. Mm-hmm. And the game didn't really, for me, get into the swing of itself in terms of visuals until you left that area and got to the sort of final temple zone.
Where you're fighting the weird robots with brains in their tum-tums.
Yeah.
So,
and I think I didn't have the same issue as I did with you with Scorn, but what I think we would both agree on is that, like, waiting it's a 5-hour game and it probably takes 3 to 4 hours to get interesting. That's too long.
Yeah.
And there's a reason no one's speaking about it anymore, I think.
Yeah, it was just a really off-putting beginning for me. Like, it actively made me want to stop because it was just slow and confusing and nothing was drawing me in.
The enemy designs were odd as well in this game. Talking about having come from prey, there were like one weird plucked chicken, and then there was like a slug with a couple legs.
Yeah, and I never figured out how to actually quickly change weapons in the entire game, which was probably the most bullshit. It was me. I'm the most bullshit. But yeah, I'm cutting it. I'm cutting Scorn's
So that
Open
means we've got our
with
top
yours, 'cause-
three then. So, well, no, we don't really. We've got
No,
two
we
of the
haven't.
three.
We've got number 3, which is I think Resi Zero's inventory. I think we can agree on that.
Yeah.
Um, and then now we just need to discuss our 2 and 1, which we are pretty much in line with. And I was very surprised to see you putting Medal of Honor's checkpointing in here because you played it on an emulated version that allowed you to do save states, whereas I played it on PS3. Well, how did I play this? I can't even remember
You played
now.
it on PS3, that's right.
So I had to play it without the chance to save state and then reload. And holy fuck, that one level with the tanks in the street
The Panzer,
where you go around the
yes,
corner and it
that's the
absolutely
one.
batters you.
It was
That nearly broke me. That's the hardest thing I've done all year. And you did it so easily as well. I was devastated.
The checkpointing slash the spawning I found was a problem. Maybe I should have written respawns because it was that same level. There was like enemies literally like popping in front of my
yeah, with
vision.
good fucking bazookas.
Yeah.
So stupid.
When it comes to like save states and stuff, unless I'm like this is probably what shows that it was bad. I try not to use them unless I try and play the game as it was.
Yeah, me too.
Unless it's like just a quick, like if there's a bit that I'm struggling with, I will use a save state.
I mean, I did it for Sega Mania all the fucking time, but that's because it's Sega games and fuck that shit.
But yeah, but I feel okay using them because it's like, right, I've proven to myself I can get here. All it is a question of time sync. So if I can save,
exactly,
save time, Whereas like ultimately, I started dabbling in them with Medal of Honor because the game's checkpointing was awful. Like you die and it would just fire you back so far.
To the start of the level.
Yeah.
There was no checkpointing.
That's right. You're right. Yeah, it would just fire you right back to the start of the level. That Panzer level was the worst because it was a fairly straightforward level until you get to like the last literally minute of the game, and then it just goes wild.
There's just loads of dudes with bazookas and tanks
that keep spawning.
Yeah.
And
as you say, they don't run in; they just pop into thin air.
In front of you, you can be looking. You can be looking at the place where they spawn, and they'll just start popping out.
Yep. And it spoils the game
really
because I was so having so much fun with it.
Yeah, I loved that game. Really, really good game. It's
a fantastic World War II shooter. It's just needlessly unfair.
Yeah, that bit was horrid. I think it's very close to winning, but I think Wolfenstein 3D has to maybe take the biscuit because
because ultimately we had fun with Medal of Honor.
Yeah,
Medal of Wolfenstein is not fun.
This was the thing. I feel almost dirty being a video game podcast talking about one of the seminal first-person shooters.
Yeah,
and it's being the most
one of the most important games ever made.
Yeah, and we get all that, and we still appreciate that. And I think we said this in the podcast that if you're sort of a fan of video game history, this is probably a game you have to experience just so that you've experienced it. But if you're saying, do you want to go and have fun with this, you can't. I don't think you can have fun with this in 2022. It's just not. It's terrible.
Yeah. It's from an era where you were getting 3 levels of it shareware in the post.
Yeah.
Probably waiting a few months before you play it ever again. Go nuts. Keep going through the levels till you can do it quickly and you know where you're going. But if you're just trying to do it in 2022 instead of every other game you could be playing for a podcast, it's fucking wank because it's just a maze. A maze that has no discernible way of getting out. It's just blue or grey walls, and that's it.
And then the key that you're looking for will be hidden behind a blue wall that looks exactly the same to every other blue wall. You just got to sort of walk along, like nosing the side of the wall, tapping your action button until it just opens. Yeah, it's not a good game now. Sorry.
I think functionally, the way that the game plays is still pretty good.
Yes.
It's still quick. So it has that boomer shooter feel to it because it is the granddaddy of all the granddaddies. It still feels fine. It's still really fluid and quick, and the shooting is pretty cool. There's some nice gore in it. It's just the level design is atrocious. There's nothing in terms of quality of life that however many years, 30 odd years have given us since then. probably more than that. It is, yeah, it's just an ordeal. It's a yeah, that's the best way I can put it. It's an ordeal. It's a struggle from start to finish that I didn't enjoy, which is a shame because, as we both said, it's an absolute classic. It's so important.
Yeah.
But Doom is such a monumentally better game in absolutely every way.
Yep.
That I don't really care that we're shitting on Wolfenstein because.
Did we play the original Doom for the podcast, or was that just in our own time we played?
No, we just dicked about. We played Doom 64, obviously, last.
Played Doom 64, that's right, and then
2021.
I started playing Doom 1 and 2.
Yeah, because I'd already played
that.
Doom 1, I think, on Switch. I'd been
That's
in a
right.
bit of a Doom kick at that point anyway.
These games are still fantastic, whereas Wolfenstein is not.
No. So I think that has to win.
It has to win, yeah.
It just feels like that was it almost feels like that was a development remit. Just like, what should we put in all the levels? Just bullshit. Just put bullshit in them. See how people figure that out, knobs.
Okay, so the winner of most bullshit of 2022 was every level of Wolfenstein 3D, Medal of Honor checkpoint at number 2, and Resident Evil 0 inventory. Was it Medal of Honor Frontline? Is that the one?
Yes.
Yeah, because I just picked that up like 3 days ago on PS2 because I need to have this, and I was like, I saw it there. It was like £2 or something. And I was like, I'm sure I've got that. And I was checking.
I reckon that game has to be very easy to find. It must be. I think it sold a hell of a lot, didn't it?
Especially on PS2. And I was like flicking through my list, and it wasn't there. I was like, I'm just going to buy this again just in case. So I did, and I didn't have it unless I've got it on another console that I didn't check.
Maybe I've got it on GameCube.
I'm not sure where my GameCube games are. Maybe I don't have any. They must have.
Maybe not.
Oh well, maybe I used to. Anyway.
No, you definitely used to.
Yeah. Right, pee break, buddy.
Okay, I'm gonna get a drink then.
30 seconds.
Right.
Great T-shirt. I've just noticed what you're wearing.
Yeah, in celebration of a great game that we'll be talking about soon, I imagine.
I think so. It's in the next list.
Oh, it is. It's me, isn't it? Okay.
Yeah.
So that takes us to what category? How many have we done now? Category number 4.
We're getting up there, Alex.
We are indeed. We're nearing the mid. Well, we're basically midway now. It is best surprise, and there's not really an actual defining definition of what this means. Something that just surprised us.
Yes.
Could be a game, could be a moment, could be a feeling. But our nominees are Wario Land, Diddy Kong Racing, Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker, Dino Crisis, Symphony of the Night, Inscription, David loving a Zelda game, Prey, Mario Land 2, and the ending of Scorn. So we've both got a Game Boy Mario game in here. We just got a different one, and I think it's probably just safe to say that they both just held up incredibly well. Mario Land 2, I think, is up there with the best Mario games that there are in terms of it just feels right. It doesn't feel anything like Mario Land 1, which felt like quite different. It's just a proper Mario game on the Game Boy, and Wario Land is very different to that, but it also still is an excellent little game that should not be overlooked, I think.
Yeah, and so you're going to have to remind me of this, and I think this is the fact that I can't remember it is probably the reason it's not going to hang and end up getting cut. But it links itself into into Super Mario World, right? The story wise, is that right?
Wario Land.
Yes, there's something. I'm sure there's something that happens at the end, and you realise, wait, is Wario actually the bad guy? And I just can't remember what that is. But I remember thinking that, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is actually saying something quite meaningful here and comparing it to other games. It might even be Mario Land 2, it links itself. Maybe that's why we played them together.
Yeah, because Wario Land is technically, the full title is that it's Super Mario Land 3.
Yeah. It's sort of a Mario Land from the perspective of Wario. Does he not do all the work and get all the money or something? Mario just comes along and nicks it or something like that.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, because you get a house at the end, don't you?
Yeah, that's right.
But you need to get shitloads, otherwise you get a terrible.
But I agree with you. Mario Land 2.
Sorry, yeah, you get the biggest treasure at the end, which is a statue of Princess Peach, and then Mario appears in a helicopter and nicks it.
Yeah, I knew something like that happened.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well remembered.
But I also want to sort of give special mention to your one. Like, I remember playing this and being amazed that like, you're right, this is a proper Mario game on a Game Boy. It's not like is it the first Super Mario Land where you're basically like a tadpole on a screen going around beside an alien?
Yeah, it's pretty ugly.
Yeah.
It's got like 4 levels or whatever it is. This one has like, really good sort of Mario 3 NES style visuals.
Yeah.
It's got an overworld map. It's got like bosses. It's just got variation in what it's doing. Whereas Mario Land just has a different background and some different music. Where this one had visually and thematically and gameplay wise distinct levels from each other. When you're in space and you can do that sort of moon jump stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was a great game.
The rabbit ears as well. Great power up. The rabbit ears. I just think Mario Land 2 is a wicked game.
Maybe that should have been on my list as well. For me, they're great and they're big surprises in this. Again, well, this is a personal list, isn't it? Ultimately, but like Game Boy games are not something other than the Pokemon ones. Game Boy had a Game Boy and Tetris as well, but like, for the most part, handheld games over the years, especially throughout my childhood, just never grabbed me. So it's going back as an adult, playing through old Game Boy games and realizing, oh, you were missing out on these things. These were great.
Yeah.
Which is going to be probably a running theme of all my games in this list, to be fair.
Yeah. But, it's quite easy to look down on stuff like that now because it's black and white.
Yep.
It's however many bits it is, probably not even 8. It's really old, so you can sort of look at a Game Boy game and think, well, why would I bother with that?
They're also inherently more simple than even other games
Yeah.
of its time because of the hardware it was on.
But these two are both bona fide, like proper Mario games, and yeah, they're both excellent. But I kind of knew that Mario Land 2 was great. This is the most I've ever appreciated it because I was forced to sort of sit and then talk about it and think about how good it is or whatever. Whereas when I was a kid, I was just like, yeah, this is cool. It's Mario, but it's on a Game Boy, and I could probably never complete it then.
Yeah.
So I don't think either of them hang. Cause...
No. I also think like I agree with you. I don't think either of them hang. But it also makes me think that my number 4 on my list, Diddy Kong Racing, probably doesn't hang either because I knew I was going to like Diddy Kong Racing. I was surprised at how much I liked it. I played it on N64 as a kid. I enjoyed it. I just never really clicked with what the game was going for. I think as a kid I used to do the races, play against my friend, and then I'd just drive about and try and run over the elephant in the main hub area. Whereas like this is the first time I really got to grips. I was like, oh my god, this is a serious heavyweight in the kart racing genre in a way that I just wasn't expecting it to be.
Yeah. I think I'd banged on about it enough that we probably shouldn't put it as a surprise.
No.
It was more of a confirmation bias, not even bias, but a confirmation that Alex wasn't chatting shit and that it is actually really good.
He continues to be able to recommend good games. The run goes on. Except
Scorn, which was, again, a game I did not enjoy, but I found the ending of that, whether it's good or not, I did not see it coming at all. Where he just basically, they pick you up, they do all their weird shit, pulling all your guts out. You start crawling your way out of wherever you are, the temple to the big open vagina hole at the end, and then not going anywhere, stabbed, dead, game over.
And that's it. I really thought they were going to. I thought they were going to when I first played this game because the character. I think the sort of general consensus is the thing that kills you at the end is the character you sort of play as first that dies.
That's right. Right.
I thought that what they were going to do is they were going to really run with that. So I was like, oh, if there's going to be 5 acts and you're going to play 5 different human characters and each one is going to sort of because you start off in a similar area as well. I think to what you did in the first one. So I was like, oh, so I'm just continuing the work that the first person did, and I thought the game was really going to build on that, and then it just didn't. And it just fucks you at the end in the most confusing way. Like I don't have any idea what happened in that last like 30 minutes with the weird getting my penis milked to get my insides chopped up by a robot to being sort of carried by my own consciousness in a robot. The Krang things. Oh, it was just nuts. That game I had no idea what was happening.
Yeah, just bonkers. But this is best surprise, and that is not the best surprise. It's just one of the biggest, I think.
Yeah, in a way, it was kind of apt in a game that you just did not enjoy.
Yeah,
it is the most fuck you ending, isn't it?
It really is. Like, I mean, I kind of enjoy it because I don't like the game, so it's kind of like, of course they did that at the end.
Yeah,
this game does nothing but have contempt for you from start to finish. Yeah. So yeah, fine, fuck me. I guess you're right.
Yeah, I think I'm going to agree with you on this one as well. Talk to me a bit about Prey.
Well, this is a game that we'd talked about for so long.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that's
got
felt like it should have been
underground fandom, doesn't it? Like it's a real sort of small but vociferous bunch of people that love this game.
And it was set up to be something that I should have played ages ago. It was by Arcane Studios. It's similar in tone to sort of a BioShock type of game. It has like physics-based combat in it. But there must have been something that... It must have been reception, right? I don't think it got a bad critical reception, but certainly a commercial-wise, it just flopped. Like nobody bought this game. No one was talking about it afterwards. Yeah, me neither.
I think the critical reception was pretty good. Let me have a quick look at Prey.
I think so too.
IMDb.
In my head, it's like I must have assumed it was getting 7s and thinking, I'll get to it at some point. But
do you think the fact that it was named Prey was part of the problem?
Yeah,
in that
absolutely.
people sort of obviously it was
They
in
Wii U'd
development
themselves with
hell.
it.
Yeah, it was in development hell for a long time, wasn't it? And then it like the first game is, I think I've got the first game on 360.
Nice.
Was some
Native
weird
American portal
Native
shit.
American. Yeah, and this game came out and was just nothing like it.
They regret it. They definitely regret it. I've seen. I think we probably said it on the pod. I know some of the development team or the director or whatever regrets that they had to use that name. They didn't want to,
Have
but
IMDb changed how they do things? So it's got an 8.1 out of 10.
are you on Metacritic or
Oh,
IMDb?
IMDb. That's why I'm confused. That's why I kept getting the movie as well.
Yeah. Oh, that's supposed to be quite good, actually. By the way,
I think I've watched the start and it's got a
is that
dog
on Disney
in it.
Plus.
Yeah. It got an 8.2, 82.
That's good. See,
Yeah.
that's a good score. And I so in terms of best surprise, is the fact that we both really quite enjoyed this game a surprise? No, it was more again like a confirmation of, oh, yeah, that was actually quite good. Wonder why I hadn't played that earlier, and that's
Yeah.
probably
And
how I would sum it up.
there's a lot of like, I always feel like roulette until David brings up Alien Isolation, but like I think there's a lot of sort of sort of gameplay elements that are very similar to Alien Isolation is in this, and to me this is an example of how to do it well. In that, like you create a stealth. There's a lot of stealth parts of this game.
Yeah,
the enemies are a genuine threat, but
yeah,
for the most part, once you encounter an enemy, it's not "fuck you, you're dead." It's right, you're in the shit here. How are you going to get yourself out of it? And I think like, especially I'd say the first third of the game for me personally is the strongest part, when you're just sort of everything is still scary, everything is still the unknown, you're still walking into rooms and you're right, the mimics are genuine, like also pretty genuine threats. The first third of this game is fantastic.
and I guess you could probably the greatest surprise within Prey is how surprisingly open it could be for you to experiment with ways of playing the game.
Oh, yeah, it really
you
let
accidentally
you mess
fucked
about.
yourself with it, but I definitely had one of my favorite moments, like singular moments of the year, was turning myself into like launching myself into across the room,
like,
jumping onto a ledge, and halfway through a jump, turning myself into a coffee cup and being able to roll under some shutters to get into a room was like one of the coolest things I did all year. But you got stuck somewhere by doing something similar to that, didn't you?
I was I can't remember. Oh, it was the bit where you've got to find and repair like those auto shooting turret guns.
Oh,
So you can
yeah.
open a door. And there was a turret gun in a locked room. So I was like, oh, I'll get myself in there. Got myself into it. Realized that I couldn't get myself out, and I'd used up all my magic, whatever they call it in the game. So I couldn't recup myself, or I had like 3 seconds of being able to cup myself before it would like I would just go big again. And the only place I could like maybe like jimmy my way out of this locked cage, but it would be right in front of a person. As soon as they see me turn into a cup and start rolling about, they just start shooting me. So
that was the one thing I didn't like about that, is that sometimes like if you turned into something, that didn't matter.
Yeah,
the enemies would just know you were there and attack you anyway, and that kind of spoilt that a little bit sometimes. Like, oh, I'm going to turn into a chair and just slide my way across the room, but they would just attack you. I mean, you were a moving chair, that's fair enough, but that's not what the game was selling me, I didn't think. But I don't know if if that's a surprise that I liked it, because I kind of always thought I would. It was more just I thought, it just was better than I expected. Your number 3 that you put kind of ties into my number 2.
Yeah,
so I'll let you talk about it in a sec. But yeah, the fact that you outwardly said you loved the Zelda game, I don't think I've ever heard you say it before, and I've spent so much of my younger life in love with Zelda. I've got a whole cabinet full of Zelda stuff behind me. I was so like over the moon happy that you genuinely really liked Wind Waker. That was one of my favorite surprises.
I'm hoping that we play another Zelda game this year in 2023, so I can sort of test. I don't know whether I'm at the stage where I'm just sort of enjoying the simplicity but what Zelda games offer, and the just sort of niceness. Like we're going to get into a bit where currently, I'm I'm finishing off God of War. You finished God of War, and we're speaking about it. And as much as I like that game, there's things that happen, and there's like big serious stuff, or like attacking animals that just don't want to be attacked. That I'm just finding exhausting and a bit of a drag. Whereas you never get that in a Zelda game, do you? It's always just pure joy, start to finish. And there was something about sort of rediscovering just the fun in games that I've found quite
that makes a lot of sense.
Rewarding, because I've gone from being like, I don't know, maybe it's just because I've played a lot of them now and beginning to get fatigued, but like having loved The Last of Us as much as I did over as many years as I have, I'm just finding that like the dark, dreary, always bad, 9 times out of 10, there's a guy that's a dad that used to be a bad guy but is trying to be better.
Yeah.
And I'm just finding it a bit fucking exhausting now. Maybe it could also just be the last few years with COVID and stuff, and like,
well, yeah, you don't really
turn itself inside out with Brexit and the economy and stuff like that. It's just
supposed to be an escape, isn't it? Not a continually fucking macabre, morbid depression fest.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, maybe that's it, and maybe it's just come along at the right time, and maybe now that it's come along at the right time and I've sort of found one, maybe the door opens to the rest of them that I think maybe I'm going to become a fan in a way that
yeah. If anything, it's just a testament to how Nintendo's games, the core games, have been so like enduring over time. It's just how endearing they are and how fun they are, and a pure, like, anyone can enjoy level. That I think Wind Waker is one of the biggest proponents of that feeling.
If someone was to tell me to describe Wind Waker in a word, the first word that always jumps in my head is joy, and I think there's something to be said for that. And I think that's what Nintendo. When Nintendo do a lot of things wrong, but when Nintendo are at their best, that is what they do best, better than anyone else. And yeah, I think I'm sort of slowly rediscovering a love for that type of just pure fun in games. So yeah, I think that's why. What will we talk about next, Alex? What have we got coming up? Dino Crisis.
Yeah, go on. That's your one. That was your number 2. Tell us, because I love Dino Crisis.
Yes, and I wonder if that's why maybe it doesn't ultimately make it. I'm also using Dino Crisis as a sort of proxy for the amount I've discovered that I've loved Resident Evil this year.
Yeah, fair.
And that's probably, other than actually, for some reason I'd forgotten all about it, but other than one of your non-pod game of the year game, maybe that's my favorite Resi-ish game. But yeah, like Dino Crisis was just, again, it's just a fun, really engaging, takes the Resident Evil formula and runs with it in a completely mad as a box of frogs direction, and just sort of lives its best life. Like it knows it's crazy, it knows it's over the top, it knows it's a bit silly, but it just doesn't care. And I think I just love that about it.
Yeah.
It's not the best game I've played this year by a country mile, but it's some of the sort of most endearing memories I've got of playing in podcasting this year's for Dino Crisis, and us like watching each other play and just like laughing at like us trying to like run around dinosaurs and lock them out of rooms and things like that. And then the amazing voice acting was just something else. I wonder maybe if there's other stuff on this list, it's probably a better surprise in this, because ultimately, by the time we got to Dino Crisis, we had played a couple of Resident Evil games by that point, so I probably knew I was going to like it.
You probably felt the same way that I guess I did when I first played this. You also, like, element of surprise you had with it this year is the element I also had with it 5 years ago, whenever it was that I first played it, thinking, surely this isn't going to feel right. Like, this can't be as enjoyable as an actual Resi. It'd be like, the spin-off weird dinosaur shit. But no, it's different enough, but it feels familiar to the Resi formula enough that I love it so much. Probably one of my favorite spin-offs that's ever been made.
Yeah,
it's just, here's all the shit that you like about Resi: the dumb tank controls. Do they have item boxes? No, they don't really, do they? But like the campy voice acting, the stupid animations, the gore, the different stupid puzzles that you have to do to get through doors, but also it has dinosaurs, and it's just a genre I wish existed to a greater degree now, but
Yeah.
probably never will for some reason.
No, no, but maybe we'll get there. I guess the survival horror genre is making having a bit of a renaissance thanks to the Resident Evil remakes. Maybe we'll get there.
Mm.
Biggest, probably, I mean, not best. One of the larger surprises I got in connection to this was just how well Dino Crisis 2 and 3 are received is at the time when they were released in comparison, because they're like, in my opinion, they're so much worse than this game, but a lot of people like them better.
Yeah, I am determined to give 2 a good college try, but I can't see myself enjoying it as much as that, because it's fundamentally not the same type of game.
No, it's changed.
And I like Dino Crisis because of the type of game that it is.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need it to be faster and more action oriented. I like it because it is that way. It is a Resi original style.
I think looking at other games that we've got on this list, I mean, we've got another couple to talk about, but I wonder if Dino doesn't make it. Maybe we drop it.
Okay.
I think our number ones have to be considered strongly, and then we're looking for another one really, and I just don't know if it makes the cut. But I don't know. What do you think about it? I guess.
Well, yeah, primarily I'm surprised that you didn't have Inscription, which is my number one, in your list, because I just had no idea what to think of this. I didn't know if this was a goer or what. It was just one of those games that I thought, like, this looks very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if the game's going to be fun. I don't know if it's going to be up its own arse. You know, it felt like it was one of them kind of Undertale-y sort of things where everybody's talking about it. But is it going to land with us? Is it our kind of thing, or is it just going to be a bit of a like? Are we going to be groaning like, "Oh God, look how clever this game thinks it is"? But not only did I end up loving the game, every part of the game, the amount of actual surprises that it threw at me as I was playing is why I put it as my number one. Number one, it surprised me. It was great. Number two, just so much mad shit happens. All the stuff we've spoken about a few minutes ago, you know, all the meta stuff, all the weird story beats, the twists, the way the game changes, how you play it. It's it's nothing but surprises, really.
I think in my mind I have overplayed, so I knew that the game changed quite significantly after.
Oh, okay.
I knew that the game, the sort of card game that you played, eventually turned into the sort of top down. What RPG would you call it? It eventually does. I knew that happened, but that doesn't really take away from the other surprises the game has. And this game has got so many layers to it that probably is. It's obviously a big turning point in the game. But it's not the only turning point by any measure. And the game's has got a lot of twists and turns. So it's kind of why I was keen when you actually started speaking about it earlier on to probably keep this on Best Surprise, because ultimately it is, and I never expected to be captured by the story in the way I was. Even when the game started, I didn't expect it to grab me like it did, and it certainly didn't expect it to take the turns that it did. This is it's the developer. He's the one that made, what's that horse? Is it the horse game?
Something to do with a pony in it or something.
Yeah.
Pony Island or something. I can't remember.
Something like that. Yeah, but he's a really interesting developer now. This is obviously his most complete and coherent game, I would say. Yeah. Fascinating to see what he does next, I guess.
Absolutely. It was such an unknown quantity. Like, I had no idea if we were going to like this or not. I had no idea what to expect from it, and it's even on the lowest sort of rung of, is it a fun card game? Absolutely. Yeah. Like, really fucking fun. Loved it.
I'm pretty sure we spent a good 30 minutes after having podcasts about this game searching Etsy to see if people had made cards, which they had.
Of course. Yeah. Still need to buy those, actually.
Yeah. In my number one game for Best Surprise was Symphony of the Night. I think this was just because I think I went into this game basically blind. Didn't know anything,
and obviously it was one of my favourites of all time anyway. But now it's one of yours too, which I guess is great.
Yeah, it's become one of my favorite games, not just of like certain genres or eras. It's just like one of my favorite games ever now. And yeah, just it's a game, like I say, that at the beginning, I knew next to nothing about. It didn't even look how I expected it to look. I think when I loaded it up, it just looked totally different. So I think it was the sprite on screen was much larger than I remember. So like I remember I'd spent a lot of time watching Giant Bomb play Castlevania and Metroid games, and yeah, I just obviously hadn't ever seen them play Symphony of the Night, just other ones, and it just looked completely different. But yeah, there's not a lot more to say about that really, because we've spoken about Symphony of the Night already. It's just I just didn't expect it to be what it was.
So how does that make you feel about a winner?
I think the winner's probably is Inscription. I mean, it's the most surprising, isn't it? Like everything.
Neither of us knew what to expect. I guess that's the only thing that knocks Symphony of the Night down, is that I knew I loved it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think as a singular list, given that you knew about Symphony of the Night because it was already one of your favourite games, and I knew a couple of the things that Inscription did. I didn't know enough about it. I didn't know all about it. I think it has to be winner Inscription, and then Symphony of the Night, and then David loving a Zelda game.
Yeah, I think so.
Which
Inscription is our best surprise.
Hopefully, come the end of 2023, like I say, I hope there's another Zelda game up for discussion. But we will see. We don't really know what we're going to be covering over the next year. So,
I can't see us not covering Tears of the Kingdom, but
oh yeah, that's true. That'll be out.
That's out in April.
Oh my god, it's not long.
Finally, not long. Yeah.
Hopefully, as a segue, this doesn't bode badly. But next, we're moving on to worst game of 2022.
Yeah. Hit us with the nominees.
Nominees, we have Ratchet and Clank, Medal of Honor Frontline, Wario Land, Resident Evil 5, Wolfenstein 3D, Scorn, and that's it. I was really tripping myself up there. I forgot how hard it was to read and not know what was coming next, and then have repeating ones coming up. I should
have crossed some out.
We spoke about this earlier. This is a tough old one because I don't actually hate any of these games.
It sounds like listeners already will be saying, "Hang on, you definitely hate Wolfenstein."
That's true.
And Alex definitely hates Scorn.
The thing is, maybe I'm just drawing my parallels from the wrong place. But like, I don't hate it. I just don't think it's very good.
No.
Like, I understand why it was how it was, and I think like I can see that it's come from an era, and it's very of that era. I just don't ever want to play it again. But if it's in an art book, I'll look at the pictures.
Yeah, we've both put it at number 2, but I'm almost inclined to cut it because it's just old.
Yeah,
it's just old and unfriendly and archaic in terms of the way it's been developed, because nobody had ever made a game like that before. And fundamentally, to play it, as I said earlier, the gameplay itself is fine. It's actually just getting to the fucking end of it is a nightmare.
It's an ordeal, yeah.
But I am tempted to cut that.
Let's put it on the chopping block and see how we feel about the other ones.
Yeah. Ratchet and Clank was the first game we talked about this year, and I think while we both enjoyed it for the most part, I know for a fact that the humour did not land with us. We were disappointed in the weapons.
Yeah, I thought this was probably the worst weapons that I can remember playing. Like, was it the previous one for the PS4 that had like the dancing ball gun and stuff like that, like, and guns?
Yeah,
and like this.
These just felt a lot more like actual guns, like a lot of shotguns and a lot of rocket launchers and stuff.
Yeah, and
I just really did not enjoy the story. I can't even remember what it is. Isn't it when like she gets really annoyed, the girl gets really annoyed at the little robot and banishes her for a little bit and then forgives her almost immediately as soon as she sees her again.
Because she becomes is she not like, she's got like a rage problem or something, or she can be dangerous or something like that, like she can, and the girl's got like a metal arm and it's because of that wee robot chopped her arm off or something like that, and they just make up really quickly. Yeah, I just
think it was just fundamentally like not. There was nothing exemplary about it. It was just a very standard experience from start to finish. It was just like, it's another Ratchet and Clank game. Why does it exist? Yeah, it was a like a way for them to show the tech demo, like how quickly the PS5 can load stuff.
Well,
So you
that's
could
the
do
only
that
reason
little weird.
the rifts even
Yeah,
existed,
that's
wasn't it?
it.
Like,
Yeah,
and ultimately, I'm not sure whether the rifts actually improved the gameplay all that much.
no,
And yeah, it just
they didn't
felt
do
like
enough with them.
no. I mean, we're gonna have probably. I won't go into it deep because we're probably going to have a big discussion about Sony big budget first party titles in the next episode. But like,
Yeah,
I just don't like you're saying. Like, what does this bring to the table that every other
Mm.
Ratchet and Clank game hasn't already brought to the table, aside from it being
yeah,
shinier? Like, I
yeah.
think it's
For
actively
me,
worse
nothing.
in some areas. Like the weapons aren't as fun. The story isn't as fun. The jokes weren't
the
landing.
The attitude has just gone from it. It's
Yeah.
it's a Pixar. It's a bad Pixar ripoff rather than
Yes, spot
something
on.
like a Futurama.
Yeah.
It's totally changed its tact after they put that shitty film out, and
Yeah, you're
they've
so
spoiled any.
spot on.
It just becomes irritating.
Yep. Yeah. And this is coming from people that I remember, I'm sure you went through a period of playing old Ratchet and Clank games. And
We put Ratchet and Clank 2 as our game of whatever year it came out, 2000 or
right.
whatever. You and I loved that game,
Yes.
and we really liked the PS4 one as
I
well, which is
loved the
what spurred us
PS4
to.
one. Loved the PS4 one. I think I that was part of the reason. Is like I went and sat and got the platinum for the PS4 one. I just couldn't even be bothered with this one. Just couldn't be bothered by the
Yeah.
time I finished it.
Yeah.
There are fun bits. I thought the arena was quite fun.
Yeah, that was the best bit of the game.
Yeah.
That and the shield that turns into a shotgun blast when you let go of the
Yes.
trigger. It's fucking amazing, that weapon.
Yes.
But again, it's not funny. It's just a cool thing.
I think this is maybe stays and
I
come
don't think we
back
cut
to
this
it.
yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Medal of Honor Frontline is my number 4, but actually I kind of wish it wasn't. It should certainly, now that we're talking about it, Ratchet and Clank should be above that. I didn't hate this game. I like this game. It's a very, very good Second World War shooter, but I think the controls kind of feel a little bit off the rage, and I think that's probably what put me off. The checkpointing, like we spoke about, is also bullshit, and the spawning in enemies. Other than that, it's for the most part a really good game. It's just old.
Yeah.
A bit like Wolfenstein.
Yeah. Yeah. We spoke at the time, both sort of said to each other, like, oh, I remember this game. This game's fucking awesome. And then it kind of wears you down a little bit. But that first, like, the first time you drop back into the D-Day landing and stuff is a special moment. And I think that both of us really enjoyed getting back into that again.
Yeah, and I think also playing it makes you realise how far storytelling in first-person shooter games has come. Because this game basically doesn't have any. It'll tell you there'll be a little bit of a blurb at the start of each level. And then
That's
you'll move on.
right, yeah.
There's basically no storytelling in-game.
No.
But it's old.
Which is mad, considering I'm pretty sure Spielberg was behind something to do with this game.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Tell me about Wario Land, Alex.
I just this was just going in, like, looking at every single game and thinking, like, Wario Land was fine. I preferred Mario Land 2. It's not a bad game at all. It's just one of the ones that I thought we played. I mean, we played so many great games this year, and a lot of the games we played this year, like, my favorites ever.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it was a big year.
Yeah, games like Symphony of the Night and Wind Waker and like Dino Crisis, Metroid Prime, Diddy Kong Racing. Like, none of these games were going to stack up anywhere close to those. So Wario Land was just kind of like, it was one of the most forgettable for me because
Sure.
And I think if we look at the numbers of podcast downloads, I think that episode was our least listened to ever. So we're not touching Game Boy games ever again, everybody. Even Pokemon. Fuck it. But no, Mario Land is a very good game.
Yeah.
It's just there was however many it is, 16 games I enjoyed more.
Yeah, fair. Resident Evil 5, again, like, it's not an awful game. I was telling you before we started recording that it was a game that I loved when it first came out. I remember I played it co-op with my flatmate at the time, and then it had me sitting in lectures at uni reading through Resident Evil Wikipedias to try and get my head around the lore, and I was like, this game is great. I absolutely loved it. I loved the inventory management. I loved going hunting for gems to go shoot down. And then we played it again this year, and I had fun playing a game with you, but I came away thinking, oh, this game isn't actually that good. And it was the worst game of the year for me because it took a game that I had quite a soft spot for and just rubbed dirt all over it. So it kind of...
I think, yeah, I'd probably already been there, like, having looked back at it and how I've got more... I've always been massive into Resi, but yeah, when I look back at it, I always think, Resi 5 is one of the worst. And even when we played it in co-op, you could still tell that it's... The series was getting messed up. It was going in the wrong direction before everything hit the shit in the next one. Which is, again, is a game that we... You know, if we actually want to talk about the worst game we played this year, it's easily Resi 6. It was just so bad we didn't podcast about it.
Yeah, we tried.
But Resident Evil 5 is to blame for Resident Evil 6. And realistically, we've cut so many now, we've only actually got 2 games left that we haven't cut. And this is the third. So either we bring one of them back, we bring Wolfenstein back, I guess, and put it at number 3, or we put Resi 5 in there.
I feel good at Resi 5 being in there. Like I say, it's indicative, like you said, it's indicative of a series that was on the slide at that point. It's shat all over my memory of the game. It made us play Resident Evil 6. I think it's definitely probably for me it's maybe number 3 on our list after we've had the discussion.
Right.
And then,
let's put it in there because we've already given Wolfenstein most bullshit, so we'll lay off it.
Ratchet and Clank goes in at number 2, and then at number 1, doesn't even touch the sides, is the weird plucked chicken game that is Scorn.
Yeah, and I don't ever want to talk about Scorn again, so if anyone wants to hear why we don't like it, just go back and listen to the podcast and you'll hear me rant about how annoyed it made me.
I am quite looking forward to... Actually, it's your turn, Alex. Sorry, I'm jumping in.
What, for the next category?
Yeah.
It's the second to last one now.
You can read all the nominations.
Yeah, we didn't... I think last year we gave it like 5 each.
Yeah, we'd be here for days.
Well, I think last year's Game of the Year awards, we had the best like non-podcast game just in general, and then the best one from that year. And we had 5 nominees for each, so we were just going on and on and on about games we hadn't even potted about. Whereas this year, we've just done one award that we're each going to have a winner for, and it's our Outsider Award, which is our non-podcast Game of the Year. I will let David run through his sort of however many he wants to talk about in a minute. Originally, mine was Lost Judgment, which is easily the game I played the most this year outside of the podcast. I think I sunk 60 odd hours into that. It's a 2021 game. It's not by any stretch the best Yakuza game I've played, but I really didn't play that many games this year outside of the podcast or Sega Mania stuff. So the best Sega Mania game I played would be Rocket Knight Adventures on the Mega Drive. And I really recommend anyone listening who's not played that, give that a shot. Also, Probotector or Contra Hardcore, I think it is another incredible game. Basically, just play any Konami game on the Mega Drive. Almost all of them are incredible. But my winner is Onimusha Warlords, which is a real shame that we didn't get a chance to podcast about, and I think we just ran out of time in the summer. It was like September the 30th, and we were like, we can't call this summer Resi anymore. It's not at all summer.
I think it also ran across, like, it double holidayed us. So, like, by the time we had finished it had been like a month and we hadn't podcasted about it. It's so much time has passed. But we did play. This is the one that never was. This is like the
I tell you why. It's because it was October. By the time we'd finished it, we had to do horror games. That's why we never did it, because we jumped into Luigi's Mansion. But Onimusha Warlords, I think, it has to be amongst the most underrated games.
So good, isn't it?
In existence, because nobody talks about this game anymore. But it's like Samurai Resident Evil, and it's just fucking brilliant. I haven't played the second or third one. I do own them. Oh no, I have. I started playing the second one, didn't I? Yeah, the second one's really good as well. But we played the remaster of this, and again, absolutely picked that up.
Yeah, it's still good.
There's not many.
if the tank controls is something that puts you off older Resident Evil games, this doesn't. Especially the HD or the remaster version doesn't have that, so
No.
it handles how you would expect a modern game to play, and it still feels good.
Yeah, it's quite short as well, so it's nice and easy to blast through. Really satisfying combat, cool puzzles, nice, like a really cool setting, an amazing soundtrack, terrible voice acting, which you should want in a game like that for the nostalgia of it. Just On Bush Warlords is fantastic. We had both of us had a really great time with it.
Yeah, it was really good.
It's just a shame we didn't get to talk about it for a couple of hours, but just know that we would have said nice things for the whole time.
Yeah.
Well, what other guy? You've got a winner, but before you say that, you had quite a good list of stuff. You've deleted it from our spreadsheet, so I can't remember what you had now. But...
I mean, I'll run through a couple. The one that it actually got me thinking. I was trying to think of the best Sega game I played this year. I'm actually not sure what that is. The one that is stuck with me, and I think it's just because I like the intro music so much, is the Power Rangers fighting game.
You didn't really play a lot of amazing ones, to be fair.
No.
You didn't get lumped with anything absolutely fantastic.
The thing I like about this is it sort of scratches that little itch I've got in the back of my head, and that like the fighting game genre is a genre that is eternally passed me by for some reason, and
must be one of the few we've not touched on this pod as well.
There's the odd game that I've played over the years, like obviously like I'd had my time with Street Fighter 2 Turbo, and then there was Killer Instinct on the Super Nintendo. I think I played a little bit.
That's so hard, that.
For the most part, like fighting games, I know nothing about it. I don't understand the intricacies of it. I don't understand like what makes people good, like the kind of things that I should be thinking about. I basically just jump and kick. That's all I do. And this game, when I played it, just sort of struck me as sort of baby's first fighting game, and it's like it's really easy. It's easy to pick up, and
you smashed through it in like half an hour.
Nailed through it, didn't I? That was just a fun game, and I think it's like one of my sort of top. There's plenty tops because that's such a good sort of sound chip that the Mega Drive has got, but like it is a great sort of chiptune version of the actual theme tune. Of that TV show. The other one I wanted to talk about, well, I played Cult of the Lamb this year. This Ultimate was never going to be my winner, but it's one that sort of is quite fun. It sort of came along, and at the same time that I was being sort of disappointed by Rogue Legacy 2, and it's sort of a simpler version of that, but with base building mechanics added onto it. It's fun, it's simple, it's short. I think if it had been any longer, it wouldn't have been that fun. But yeah, it's challenging, it's cutesy. It's just a fun game for what it is, but it's not going to live long in the memory. I finished playing it, was glad it was over, and then moved on with my life and haven't really thought about it again until now. Loop Hero is a game that I want to play more of this year. It's a game I got on Steam. You take
I got that on Steam as well because I forgot we'd shared libraries. Yes. I remember looking at my Steam and being like, when did I buy this?
It's a really great game that I want to play more of. Basically, you take control of this player that sort of finds himself in this sort of, I don't know, like voidscape, and as you sort of move around and do laps of this track, you kill enemies which give you XP, which you can then spend to sort of put mountains and stuff, which then give you buffs when you get to that area. So like it'll like give you rocks and things like that. Yeah, it's a game that if you don't know what it is, go and have a Google. It's a really great one of those roguelikes, and probably really, really worth a look. Now you've sort of upgraded, not that you probably could have played it anyway, but it's probably worth a look for you, Alex, since you've got it in your library anyway.
Speaking of worth a look and games that you maybe haven't played a lot of, I finally succumbed today and went on Game Pass and installed Vampire Survivors and saw you were listed as somebody who's playing it or has played it.
Yeah.
You've not said anything to me about it. Is it shit? Or have you just not sank enough time into to be in love with it like everybody in the world, apparently?
I play it when I'm listening to a podcast and I want something to do with my fingers while I'm listening to a podcast, if nothing else is going on in my life. I think I've probably put about 12 hours into the Steam version.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I've put quite a bit into it. It's really simple, and it's one of these games that people are raving about, but I mean, I don't have the reverence for it that other people have for it. It's just a game that you sort of walk around. And did you ever get caught up in discussions when clickers became a thing for a hot minute in video game industry, in which it's basically a game that plays itself. It's like the Call of Duty leveling system, but without any of the gameplay attached. It's just pure leveling.
That whole thing just sort of passed me by, but
Yeah,
yeah, I remember that was a thing for a
it,
while because they did it on Giant Bomb. They used to love a
yeah.
game like that, didn't they? What was the one they always used to go on about?
Don't remember now. Don't remember. But like Jeff will still randomly talk about some sort of like Easy's weed farm or some sort of rapper will bring out
Yeah.
one where you just all about weed, and yeah, like it seems to me like that with a bit of gameplay added onto it. Like you're
Mhm.
literally just using the movement keys and moving around and walking into stuff. It's fine. I think it's fun. I felt like I've obviously played it quite a lot. Um, I don't know if I quite get why people love it as much as they do. I think someone's going to have to explain it to me. Maybe KDB, because I've heard
Yeah.
him waxing lyrical about it. Maybe he'll have to.
I saw it was
explain.
just you and him on my Xbox list of
Yeah.
friends that had played it. So I was like, yeah, I need to chat to these lads about it. That's kind of how I expected I would feel about it. I
Yeah.
would start and go, okay,
Yeah.
I don't get why this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, but
No.
it's fun.
Yeah. But my winner is Weird West, which I think is an absolutely wonderful game. So it is like a classic top-ish down, offset top down. What do you call that? Asymmetrical.
Isometric.
Isometric. That's the one. Asymmetrical. You idiot.
Speaking of asymmetrical, I really want to play Evil Dead the game, and I don't know if you do.
Yes. Because that is yes. I want to play that. I think maybe we should add that to our list.
Wait till that's gone cheap, and we'll get on it.
We were talking about Vampire Survivors there. Another game actually is probably worth a mention that I've fallen down a deep rabbit hole of is anyone's looking for a game to play while they go to the toilet. Marvel Snap is surprisingly.
Oh, see, I was hoping you wouldn't like this because I almost downloaded it the other day because everyone seems to think it's like actually an amazing phone game. I haven't played a phone game for ages, and if a man knows phone games, it is you.
If people are
Mobile Mondays man over here.
Mobile Mondays, yeah. If people are looking for a gateway drug into CCG collectible card games, this is the one. It is really, really simple, easy to pick up. Within 5 minutes, you know exactly what you're doing, and then 10 hours later, you'll find that you're actually sitting googling how to make the best of the sort of cards that you've unlocked and make the best deck that you can to like do certain things. So whether you're wanting to like have a destructive deck or whether you're wanting to have cards that build on top of each other, or yeah, it's give it a go, mate. It's good. It for some reason, it's unless I'm missing something, it lacks the ability to play your friends again, though. So I don't know why they've done that. Hopefully they'll add it. But yeah, collecting the cards is really fun, and I've actually just gone and bought the season pass for it today. So I am that mug.
Well, yeah, I mean that. Yeah, that you alluded to it there. But if we were doing a worst game of the year, non-pod, Resident Evil Reverse would be a very strong contender for that. Speaking of games you can't play with your fucking friends.
Oh my god, yeah, okay. Maybe we've got a Friday night games night and we can stream and nah, I don't want to play that game ever again.
Nah.
No. I want to talk about Weird West though.
Yes, you should.
An isometric game, and the sort of wrinkle to this is it's sort of a classic top-down PC RPG, but the wrinkle to this is that, or what I find interesting, apparently Weird West is a genre that I've just been unaware of, but so the setting in the West, but the thing is about this game, it's one of these games where you play as, I think it's 5 different characters, but once your sort of story ends with the first character, you pick up as a different character, but the world is current, so you could go to the town that your previous character, if they survived, is living their life and speak to them. And then you can like get them to join up with your posse and they'll come with you. And if you killed someone, they'll stay dead. And it's like you can kill absolutely anyone. So there can be key quest givers that you can just go up to and shoot in the head and walk away.
Oh yeah.
And the game will find a way to like figure out how to then carry the game on around you. It's just that the system that this game is built on is really quite impressive. The game is fun and it's quite engaging. But yeah, it's the systems that the games. There's another Wild West game that you can play on a browser now, and I think it eventually came to consoles, and I can't think what it's called. But basically, you were a kid, and I think does your dad get killed or your son gets killed, and you got to go off and try and figure out who the murderer was, and you got to go and kill him. But you can kill everyone in the game if you want. The game just sort of rolls with it as you go, and yeah, that's a really cool game. And yeah, I guess that's
We
all I was
nearly
gonna say.
podded about this, but I just think I didn't get around to starting it, and
You never got
we'd
round
moved
to
on
it. Yeah.
by the time you'd finished it, and it was one of those things where if I'd finished it, you'd have forgotten about it, and blah 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 blah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a game that's someone's looking for a
Still got
quirk.
it installed.
If you're ever looking for a quirky game to play, I think I'd recommend you pick that up. Which brings
So
us
that's
on.
David's winner. I mean, there's a very brief little interlude, an update for David really on my JRPG randomization
Oh yeah, let's have it.
mission. Grandia is lovely. I'm having a
Oh, is
lovely
it?
time with
Are
that.
you going to
Yeah.
stick with it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's a Switch, so I can play it on the toilet and in bed and stuff. But it's just, you want to talk about games that are like full of joy and adventure. That is absolutely
What's
it.
the
It's
story
so
like? Is it one that I could get?
fucking dumb. I don't know.
How
It's
much is it?
if you can get, I can't remember because this is the HD collection, so it comes with Grandia 2, which is like a way darker Dreamcast one that's got full 3D. This is like a Saturn one, PlayStation as well. It's very I don't want to say childish, but it's kind of getting that way. It's kind of like a Wind Waker style thing where you've got a little boy who just wants to go on an adventure,
Yeah.
and he wants to find out what's beyond the end of the world, and that's your mission, is to try and at the moment I stowed away on a steam ship to try and get over to this new continent that he'd never been to before. It's pretty standard JRPG turn-based stuff. It's got a cool it's like almost like Chrono Trigger in terms of you've got like a little meter that determines who's going first.
Okay.
It shows you when the enemies are going to attack, so you can kind of, if you attack them first before they get their move in, you can sort of cancel theirs. But yeah, I'm gonna keep going with it. It's just like a really pleasant 90s JRPG. Yeah, that's it.
I'm gonna have a look after this podcast and see how much.
I don't know
it
how
is.
much the HD collection is. It kind of goes from being expensive to being on sale, but I would recommend on Switch over everything else because you're not going to sit in front of a TV and play this for hours and hours and hours.
No. Which brings us to best game, Alex.
It does, and we've been going for a long while on this pod, as we generally tend to do, and we've spoken about most of these games, if not all of them already. Yeah. So we just need to let's get the nominees out of the way, which I believe is you, if you can figure out my nonsense bullshit.
Let's try and do it. So we've got Super Metroid, Dino Crisis, Inscription, Diddy Kong Racing, Metroid Prime, Wind Waker, Symphony of the Night, and that's it. I can get through it. It's the knowing when to stop that I can't get right. I feel like I'm cutting out halfway through a sentence.
Just say "and Symphony of the Night" in like a definitive way, and then I'll cut them together, and it'll be like
and
nobody
Symphony
knows.
Of the Night.
There you go.
Nailed it. Right. Well.
Okay, so I will.
Where do we start with this?
Right. There's a behind the curtain peek for the listeners. We actually did rank every game we played this year individually.
Oh, shit.
So I don't know if you've actually stuck by yours, but I just basically copied and pasted the top 5.
Oh, I have it, and mine's going to be nothing like it, I bet you. Oh, no.
So yours... Oh, so what did you do? You had Luigi's Mansion in there, but you don't have that anymore.
I think
what have you put in there instead? You've moved Inscription up. You've moved Inscription up above Luigi's Mansion.
That's it. I think I just felt Inscription maybe had a bit more to offer.
And I can't believe I didn't put it in here. I put a lot of stake in Super Metroid, talking about in this awards ceremony, but as it's not been shared by both of us. I've already spoken about why it's a classic. Everybody listening to this should know what it is. I will cut that now, but it's one of my favorites. It's one of my favorites of all time. But I can see how it's very much a SNES game. So if you're not, if you're looking for a game in 2022 that's going to give you a wow factor, that's going to knock your socks off, Super Metroid probably isn't that. It's just an incredibly well-made SNES game. Yeah.
I think we've probably got to cut Dino Crisis as well, then, don't we? I mean, technically, from a technical perspective, is it one of the best games? Probably not. This is again just my sort of This is my what's that game that we played? It must have been in 2021. The JRPG.
Oh, that was Parasite Eve. That was our best
I
surprise.
think Dino
2021.
Crisis is maybe my Parasite Eve of the year.
Yeah, I was thinking that. Yeah.
So yeah, I think I'm happy to cut that. It's been mentioned in the best game list, and that's it.
I don't know why I put Metroid Prime above Diddy Kong Racing, so I'm gonna fix that. I'm gonna fix that now and cut Metroid Prime because Metroid Prime. I think that Metroid Prime probably just has it has way more to it. It's a not a classic, but it is a classic. But it
is. It's one of it's see if you remove that end boss, it's one of my favorite games right up to that moment.
Yeah.
What is the Ridley? That fight with Ridley. If it had finished there, I think it might be on my list.
Yeah,
which seems harsh.
Yeah, that's fair. It's just an incredible world that's so good to explore. Even though there are points in it where it just becomes a little bit too long-winded with the backtracking and whatnot.
Yeah, that's true.
Whereas Diddy Kong Racing is just, I love it so much.
I thought Inscription would be in your top 5.
Yeah, I'm surprised it wasn't, but it's coming up against like all-time favorites, and having only had one play this year, I don't know if it's had enough time to sink its way into me for me to say I prefer this to 3 games that I've loved for decades.
Yeah,
that's a tough ask.
Let's cut it.
But Inscription is, I don't even know, is it a 2021 game? I can't remember when it came out. It's one of the best games of whatever year it came out. And if you've not played it, if you're listening to this, I don't know why, because you should have listened to all of our podcasts and then played all the games. That's the point. But it's incredible. We've said enough about it. You should be playing it. And that leaves 3 games that I believe we have in order already.
Yeah, we've basically agreed. Diddy Kong Racing
we have
3rd.
Yeah.
Which I think is well earned. That is, like I say, it's quite simple, I guess. But it just does everything. Everything it does almost flawlessly, and I think it deserves to be in this list. And in terms of memories, this is some of my favourite memories of gaming over the last year.
And ever for me.
Yeah, it's just such a great game.
Yeah.
Wind Waker.
Number 2. Wind Waker. I'm very surprised you've got it that high. Again, that's my best surprise of the year, is that David really, really likes Zelda, and I'm like nervous now that you want to play a Zelda this year, and we're going to play one that you don't like, and it's all going to come crashing down again. Yeah.
I just think this game has gone through such an interesting journey over the years. I mean, like we spoke about it in our pod, but like how resistant people were to the art style and how great actually the art style is.
Yeah.
I think I love just about everything about this game. I love the nods to the other Zelda games. I just love. I think again, to bring back Sea of Thieves, like I just love exploring the seas in what feels like a sort of open world. Like it's great, and it's just the sense of discovery that this game creates is just second to none, really. Didn't much like the little beaky boy. What's he called again? He was a bit of an arsehole. The prince lad. You basically do everything for him while he lies in bed hugging a ball.
Something like that. Yeah.
He's a bit of a dick.
Yeah, he sucks. Bit ungrateful. But he seems happy at the end.
Yeah.
He's got a lot on his shoulders. He's got the weight of the world on his shoulders in the next few years. Does
he read his head again?
He's got some growing up to do.
Back?
Oh no, I just mean he's like the prince, isn't he? So I guess
he's got some shit to deal with.
He's got some important things to be doing when he grows up to be a big lad.
Yeah,
he can't just be a postman anymore.
No, I tell you what, mini games of all the mini games, sorting the post is up there.
That is up there. That is for sure. That's a great game. Even better with a Wii remote if you could have done it that way.
Oh, I've missed out.
Be like a light gun game. Well, it's not on the Wii. It's not on the Wii, is it?
You liked that so much you even tried to be a postman at one point.
I know. That was what inspired me. I thought, I'm so good at this. This is going to be a doddle. Unfortunately, none of the postmen had wings, so I was really disappointed.
There was no dragons living on your
I didn't get
postbox.
to sit under a dragon's arsehole. No, I didn't. Yeah. This is just everything that paints out a postman's job to be was just a lie.
It's just a lie.
You can't trust it. They've got no idea.
If you were going to be a vampire, though, Alex, might be quite similar to Castlevania Symphony of the Night. I would
I would hope
guess.
so. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we don't need to say much more about it, do we? Really? It's
No, it's
the
not.
fact that it's shot its way up to one of your, I think you said top 5 of all time, which is
Oh,
magnificent.
probably, yeah. It's I would actually need to sit down and make my top 5 of all time, see if it made it in there. But yeah, it's certainly up there, and it's like it's one of the best games on the console it sits on. It's one of the best
Oh
of
yeah,
its genre. It's just one of the
doesn't
best
really
games.
push the console either.
No,
It's like you probably would have been. Some people would have been disappointed that it was only 2D. It's not taking Castlevania 3D
well, yeah,
the way that
I think it
everything
had a
else on the
bit of
PlayStation
a-
had to do.
It had a bit of a Wind Waker backlash about it. People were like,
Actually,
it's
you're
not
right.
3D. They were
Yeah,
raging
it's
about
one of
it.
those games that people have massively warmed to, and it's become not just a cult classic, but an actual. It's in a lot of people's top lists of all time. But when it was released, it was something that people painted as a bit of a black sheep of why is this still 2D? What are you playing at? What is this? The Saturn? Don't play it on the Saturn, by the way, anybody, because it's dog shit on there.
Oh, is it? That's a shame.
Yeah.
I guess that brings us to the close of the 2022 Game of the Year awards, Alex.
Yeah,
Looking
so our
forward to
winner, Game of the Year.
2023.
Yeah, actually. So I was thinking for the end of this show, we wrap up just by quickly putting out there right now something that you definitely want us to cover. Because my answer to that, I think I've mentioned this to you before, is I really want us to play Super Mario RPG
Okay.
on the SNES. Because I've never played it, and you want to get into JRPGs, and this
I
feels
do.
like a really good gateway to play like the Mario
Gateway
one.
drug.
Yeah, trust Mario. He's a gateway mushroom, so to speak, of getting into JRPGs. That is my game that I desperately want us to play this year. I think I did have one more, but I can't remember what it is. But I'll let you go before that if I try and think what it is.
Mine's probably not very surprising and not very interesting, but mine's Dead Space. I think Dead Space is, as a man that is a new convert to Resident Evil. I loved this game before I loved Resident Evil. So yeah, this is up there with me as maybe my most anticipated game in a long time.
Yeah,
Wait for
but that's a
this.
lock-in though. I was going to play that anyway. What about something that you think I wouldn't have thought of, that you've just always wanted us to get on? I'm trying to look through the stuff that you've got written down here.
Oh, fuck it. Enslaved Odyssey to the West.
There we go.
That's the one.
It's locked.
Same.
It's locked.
I've been trying to get that game in the pod since before this was a podcast. Been banging on about it. I'm actually interested to see how this is aged because I've not played it since I played it on 360. So it could have gone downhill, but I remember it being very, very good.
It's Sandy Serkis, isn't it?
Yes.
Did he do the mocap?
Yeah, he did. He did the mocap. Yeah. It's made by a developer you like as well. I'm pretty sure.
Steve Ninja, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's it. It was
Yeah, Ninja Theory.
Oh, Ninja Theory, right? Yeah, I always get those two mixed up. It was a Legacy of Kain I wanted to try as well, but I don't know if that's one for us this year. But definitely, yeah. So what we just locked in?
I just saw that in a documentary recently.
Yeah, it's probably another thing that jogged my memory of wanting to play it. Might have been, I don't know, Gamers or something. Gamers.
Yeah, I wonder where that was. But yeah, so locked in. What have we got? Super Mario RPG and Enslaved Odyssey to the West. I'm looking forward to this. Yeah, that's going to be great.
Yeah.
Especially because, like, I think even the main character, the anti-circus lad in Enslaved, looks a bit like, because it's Unreal Engine on the Xbox 360, he looks a bit like if Marcus Phoenix had sex with a chimpanzee. That's what would come out.
Yeah.
And I guess that's it. That brings us to the close. Oh no, I suppose we better do a little bit of a rundown. Do you want to give us a rundown of our winners?
Absolutely. And obviously we're going to play the Resident Evil 4 remake this year as well.
Yes.
So there'll be another summer of Resi, which we've
basically
talked
the
about.
only reason that wasn't played this year, wasn't it? Because we knew this was coming.
Yeah. It comes out in March, so that we may end up not including it in the summer part, but I think we'll do another summer this year of, I think we talked about doing 2 plus the remake of 2, should be quite fun.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
And maybe, some more Metroidvanias. Right. So, to run through the winners of this year's awards, the best story, the winner was Inscription with Firewatch and Prey in the 2 and 3 slot. Best gameplay was Symphony of the Night, followed by Diddy Kong Racing and Elden Ring. Most bullshit was Wolfenstein 3D, the checkpoints in Medal of Honor Frontline, and the inventory system in Resident Evil 0. Best surprise was Inscription, followed by Symphony of the Night for David, and David loving a Zelda game, or just Wind Waker, if you are David. The worst game was Scorn, followed by Ratchet & Clank and Resident Evil 5. Our outsider award for a non-pod game of the year was Onimusha Warlords. David's was Weird West. And our winner for best game of 2022, I guess, is Castlevania Symphony of the Night, followed by Legend of Zelda Wind Waker and Diddy Kong Racing. Topical. We are on the cusp of the zeitgeist of modern gaming with that.
We are. What was
Telling
our best
everybody
game
what
of
they already know.
What was our winner of last year for best game? Best game was Super Mario World, followed by Resident Evil Village and Death's Door. Okay, at least we're a bit more.
Fuck did Resident Evil Village get in there? That is mental. Death's Door. Oh yeah.
Death's Door is great.
God, best non-pod game was fucking Apex Legends. I
Legends.
put Lost Judgment last year. Why did I even talk about it this year?
It's still going. Maybe you just
Jesus
started playing
Christ.
it.
Yeah.
Maybe
I think that's what it was, yeah.
why have I got
Right.
Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart in non-pod games?
I don't know. At least it didn't win.
Yeah. Almost undermined myself. Which, yes, brings us to the end of episode 50 of the Resurrected or Winner Is You podcast. If you want to check out what we've been doing, you can give us a follow on Twitter, which is at Winner Is You. That's right, isn't it? Yeah, that's correct. You can send us an email. Winner Is You pod, apologies. And you can send us an email if you want to ask us a question or give us abuse for those terrible picks, which is awinnerisyoupod@gmail.com. You can follow Alex on Twitter, which is Super Thrillix. Or are you at Alex Baldridge these days?
No.
Super Thrillix.
Yeah.
And you can follow me on Twitter, which is at DavidSmiley1, SMILLIE. And I think that's it.
Yeah.
So thank you for listening. I've been David, he's been Alex, we have been a Winner Is You, and I'm out.
Keep gaming in 2023.
And I'm glad we're out because I have started to lose my voice.
Yeah.